But, so all right, the time being 5:02, I will now call to order the regular Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board meeting. Secretary Ringgold, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Benny,
Here.
Commissioner Carbajal Moran, Commissioner Engelhardt,
Here.
Commissioner Forney,
Here.
Commissioner Frederick,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Rucker,
Here.
Vice President Deshpande,
Here.
President Olson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Fantastic. Would someone please move the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the agenda is approved. On to the approval of the minutes. Would someone please move those?
So moved.
I'll move I think we have to read the date, right?
Yeah.
I'll move the regular minutes of April 29th, 2026, and the regular minutes of May 6th, 2026.
Second?
Secretary Ringgold, I see your light is on. Is that in regards to?
Thank you, President Olson. It's actually around the approval of the agenda.
Oh,
There might be two items coming up from Planning Committee, 2026-97 and 2026-99.
Okay. Is that something that we have to formally amend the agenda for?
Typically, no. I just wanted you to know that they were there.
Okay. We will make sure not to adjourn the full board meeting.
Point of information, could you repeat those numbers?
9-7 and 9-9 from planning. Which, let's stay there.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, our minutes are approved, and we are, do we have reports of officers this week? I don't believe so. Okay. Reports of appointees to outside boards, commissions, or committees. Commissioners, any reports?
Oh, from.
Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. Yes, I went to the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization board meeting, anyway, and always exciting. We do have a few organizations that we make donations or whatever we contribute to, and we get an awful lot back in return. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. And I'm trying to remember what it was. Well, anyway, lots of water quality things, words that, of course, Commissioner Benny would understand totally about water quality, sediments and nutrients and everything. But to me, what I also wanted to mention that was announced at that meeting is that the Nobel Conference, which is in, what is that, Northfield? No, not Northfield.
Gustavus, St. Peter.
St. Peter, thank you. Anyway, which is October 6th and 7th, happens to be about the Mississippi River. So I thought that was quite exciting, and that, yeah, October 6th and 7th. But once again, they are really advocating for so much of the work that we have been doing along the riverfront, and I just want to express my appreciation for their work and their advocacy and their money. So, thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Forney. Anyone else? Okay, I'll give a brief update on the last BET meeting. We just had a presentation on the city's budget. As some of you may have been aware, the city, budget right now is not looking that great. The largest overspends are around police and fire overtime and PTSD and some other things there that are pushing the city budget down, in conjunction with lower property tax collection rates in the commercial center, as we are familiar with, going down, which, now we are going down to kind of a budget reserve that is kind of, below for the first time in certainly over a decade, where the city wants it. So, just to be aware as we have these, budget conversations moving forward, that the city is in a bit of a bind at the moment. So just wanted to update y'all on that. Okay, we will now go on to the consent business. Would anyone like to move it as a slate or pull any for discussion? Vice President Deshpande.
I'd like to pull resolutions 2026-98 and 2026-101.
Okay, fantastic. Those will be pulled for discussion. Would someone please move the other two resolutions?
Be happy to move the consent agenda minus those two action items.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, the consent agenda is approved. All right, now on to the first one pulled for discussion. Would someone please move that?
I'll move resolution 2026-98, a resolution approving change order number 2 with Ramsey Company's contract number COM 9726 for the North Commons Park Improvements Project in the amount of $92,320 for a new contract total of $1,498,214.
Seconded.
Okay, to discussion.
Thank you, President Olson. My questions were, basically, this was a change order where we're adding an additional $92,000, and staff also approved $68,000 prior to this. So we have $160,000 in extra cost. Can you talk about the type of delays and issues that have led to this?
Deshpande. This specific change order relates mostly to winter condition costs for our excavation company. When we bid this project, we bid it in 3 separate bid packages. So in early 2025, we had to create a proposed project schedule for all of those contractors to bid the work and the assumed schedule for them to plan for. Between the issuance of bid package 1 and then the realities of our permitting schedule, primarily related to our building permit to begin excavation activities, we had a project delay. We had anticipated beginning the project in June. It started closer to early September, and so that pushed back a significant amount of earthwork into the winter months, which led to this cost increase. Staff support this cost increase primarily because a delay to the project overall, had we basically held off activities during the winter, would have led to a significant increase in cost for the other 27 contracts, much higher than the $92,000 that is before the board tonight.
Okay, thank you. My main purpose in pulling this item was just to make sure that the board is aware that, this is a historic investment we're making. This is maybe, I think it's the biggest investment we've ever made. But at the same time, there's cost overruns. We have 2 more bid packages coming. And so I think staff has made all the correct choices and decisions. Sorry, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Vice President Deshpande, not to interrupt, just to correct the record, all 3 bid packages have been issued and the board has approved all 28 contracts. So we now have under contract all of the contractors that are performing work at North Commons Park. And within all of those approvals is a 10% construction contingency for each individual contract. This is one contract that has gone over that 10% contingency.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that correction. And so, in these 28 contracts, I just want to make sure that we're always doing what we can, and you have been particularly, Mr. Elias, and that we just recognize too that we should always be trying to save money where we can, be as efficient as possible. And in particular, if we're running into issues with permitting or other problems coming up and we can anticipate those, you've got 9 of us up here that can go to bat and make calls and try to move things forward, because this is an extra $160,000. And in the grand scheme of things, considering the overall project, maybe it's not a ton, but these dollars add up over time. And then when we hear about the city budget being strained, all of these things become interconnected. So I just want to make sure that we keep staying very conscientious about our costs, and we as commissioners intervene when necessary. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, and thanks for keeping us apprised of how the work's going.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2026-98, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? With that, the resolution prevails. Would someone please move the next?
I'll move Resolution 2026-101, a resolution approving 2 optional annual tree removal contract extensions per bid event number 3601 for an estimated annual expenditure of $2,400,000 pending approval by the City of Minneapolis Purchasing and Civil Rights Departments in accordance with city specifications.
Seconded.
All right, on to discussion. Vice President Deshpande.
Thank you. My question here is, a couple months back, maybe we agreed to spend $800,000 in buying new trees and planting those trees. And so this contract is for $2.4 million, so we're going to be spending 3 times more in removing trees. Can you, Director McMaster, tell us a little bit about why tree removal is so much more costly and what type of a backlog we have?
Sure. President Olson, Vice President Deshpande. First off, I'll say this resolution is for private tree removal, part of the condemnation program. So this is going out to contractors. Essentially, we're providing a service by bringing in trusted, approved contractors, allowing them to bid on these condemned trees and compete against each other to provide the lowest price possible for our residents. And also the residents still have the option of going out and getting their own approved contractor to do this work. Generally, it's going to cost us more to remove a tree because we're talking about usually mature or middle-aged trees that are much bigger. It takes more time, takes more labor, more equipment, more expertise to do these things. And I think it's a little bit misleading when you put these 2 numbers together, because one is the purchase of trees for public planting. That's $800,000. That's simply the purchase of nearly 8,000 1.5 caliper inch trees. There's still the cost of putting those trees into the ground. Each one of those trees is going to cost nearly $550 to install and purchase. So once you start looking at those numbers, they kind of equalize between the two, but it's difficult to compare them both because one is private trees and one is public trees. As far as backlog, we really don't have much backlog on removals, either the private side or the public side. There are some that are monitored. We have some backlog because we're completely focused on planting right now, so we're not doing removals. So there's a little bit that are kind of adding up there, but removals is not something that we have a huge backlog on.
Okay, thank you. And the tree stump removals is not a part of this at all?
No. So originally this contract had stump grinding and tree removals combined, and it wasn't really working well for us because we were having some issues with the stump grinding portion of that contract. The tree removal portion is relatively simple because these contractors are going individually to each one of these residents or property owner sites, and they're bidding on that particular job instead of bidding a certain price across the entire maybe menu of itemized numbers, right? List of numbers. But the stump grinding portion actually is that way. So they're bidding a certain price for a certain size stump, right? Or they're bidding a certain price for a downtown stump that's in a tree grate. So they've got to do that additional work. And so the two weren't really lining up. The tree removal contract is performing as we would expect, and we would like to just continue and extend that because, once again, it's not necessarily a bid process that we need to go through because that's embedded within the process itself.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, do you have a sense of how many homeowners choose to inoculate their trees versus just allow the tree to be cut down?
I would say that it's relatively low, I mean, comparatively, but I don't have an exact number on that. We can pull that up. We do allow that as an option. There are some property owners that go that route. And usually that satisfies the condemnation, and we will come back and monitor on a kind of a semi-annually or biannually basis, just to make sure that that tree hasn't gotten to a point where either the treatment is outpacing or is being outpaced by the pest, or if the treatment had very little to no effect on the pests in that tree. And the tree continues to decline, especially with ash, because they decline so quickly and they become so brittle that they essentially start falling apart if you're not really staying on top of it. So I would say a pretty low percentage of people have ash that are treated. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Benny.
Yes, thank you, President Olson, and thanks, Vice President Deshpande, for the questions. I think that was informative. Thank you, Mr. McMaster. Just to clarify, though, too, this is a pass-through cost, or I won't quite phrase it that way, but this is so we can pay for the contractors as they proceed through the condemned tree removals, if that's what the property owner selects. But this money comes back to the park board through assessment bonding, I believe, from the city and other avenues. So this isn't a cost to the park board, but we have to be able to pay the contractors in time. Am I saying this right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. We don't pay for private trees. Thanks.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 2026-101, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, with that, it is approved. We are now on to Planning Committee agenda.
All right, on behalf of the Planning Committee, I would move Resolution 2026-87, resolution granting a permanent easement to the City of Minneapolis for the Oliver Avenue Storm Sewer Outfall Project located at Lake Harriet Park within the Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park.
Second?
Any discussion? Vice President Deshpande.
Thank you, President Olson. I just had one question, which was, some trees are going to be removed at this site. I didn't notice that in the Planning Committee notes originally. That was my mistake. But do we know how many trees, and are they being replaced?
Yes, President Olson, Vice President Deshpande, we had roughly 15 inches of trees in the natural area. Those trees were in conflict with the project. They've already been removed. No additional tree removals will take place. There were 2 boulevard trees that were called out originally to be removed. After we went through options and looked at different processes involved with trying to protect those trees, we were able to save them, so they will not be removed from the boulevard, and no further tree removal will take place.
Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, it's a roll call. Thank you for that. 2 points to Commissioner Forney. Okay, Secretary Ringgold, would you please call for a roll?
Commissioner Abeni,
Aye.
Commissioner Carbajal Moran,
Aye.
Commissioner Engelhardt,
Aye.
Commissioner Forney,
Aye.
Commissioner Frederick,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker,
Aye.
Vice President Deshpande,
Aye.
President Olson.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
And with that, the resolution is approved. On to Resolution 2026-58.
All right, on behalf of the Planning Committee, I will move that resolution, resolution granting permanent utility easements to the City of Hopkins for sanitary sewer and communications fiber line purposes in Meadowbrook Golf Course, and partial waiver of easement fees based on qualitative betterments.
Second?
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, Secretary Ringgold, will you please call a roll?
Commissioner Abeni,
Aye.
Commissioner Carbajal Moran,
Aye.
Commissioner Engelhardt,
Aye.
Commissioner Forney,
Aye.
Commissioner Frederick,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker,
Aye.
Vice President Deshpande,
Aye.
President Olson.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
With that, Resolution 2026-58 is approved.
On behalf of the Administration and Finance Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2026-88, a resolution authorizing the superintendent to submit a 2027 proposal to the Lazard Sands Outdoor Heritage Council, LSOHC, for Southworth Wetland Complex and Wildlife Corridor within Theodore Worth Regional Park in consultation and collaboration with the Friends of the Wildflower Garden.
Second?
Second.
On to discussion. Commissioner Frederick.
I just have a question about this. Perhaps maybe the superintendent would be the one to ask. Within the letter, the memorandum that we were given, the motion, it says the substitute motion is on the board for the final approval May 20th. Do we have access to the project that is going to become, is the goal of this resolution? Because there's some details in the top mentioning a wildlife underpass near Worth Lake, and I'm curious if that's still a part of consideration for the plan.
President Olson, Commissioner, I can defer to Adam Arvinson to make sure that I don't get this wrong, but I'll have him come up here and kind of respond to your question, Commissioner Frederick.
Thank you, President Olson, Commissioner Frederick. The project as envisioned was not yet fully formed because we hadn't completed the entire proposal, nor had we initiated any design work on the process. We were asking for authorization to submit. So the project had a very general scope that was described in the background of the original resolution. And essentially it was restoration of about 10 acres of wetland areas and then 2 wildlife underpasses. But that's admittedly fairly sketchy. We would have refined that a bit before proposing, and then obviously it would be refined much more as we work to deliver a project if we were successful in doing the funding. So usually at this stage, when we're asking for authorization to submit, the project is fairly conceptual in nature.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do you anticipate that the underpasses will continue to be a part of the proposal? I drive through 55 on Theodore Worth pretty much weekly, and usually every time that I drive by, I notice some sort of dead animal on the road. It's been a lot of different, I've seen turtles and raccoons and birds, and so I noticed that that's something that is pretty pertinent. So I'm just curious if that's still a path that we will continue down.
President Olson, Commissioner Frederick, I think the intent of the project proposal is to include all of those elements in the proposal. And should that proposal eventually go forward and should it receive full funding, then yes, those would be a part of the project. I think staff feels that conceptually the restoration was a higher priority than the wildlife underpasses. And so if we were to receive funding but not the full amount, we would probably start cutting the underpasses first out of the project in order to do the restoration as a higher priority level. But again, that's all dependent on how or whether the project is submitted.
Great, thank you.
Vice President Deshpande.
Thank you, President Olson. So we got this late-breaking memo, and I think basically staff seems to be asking to postpone this project past the submission deadline. So effectively, we would not be submitting this year. Is Is that correct?
President Olson and Vice President Deshpande, we've had quite a bit of discussion even just today on this. And I think we've come to the conclusion that based on some of the communications that we've received, that it's probably better for us to take a little more time to fully study some of the particular hydrology issues and formulate a more comprehensive proposal for how we advance. We would need more time than we have available before the submittal. So the memorandum that's in front of you asks for a postponement to allow staff to do that, and that effectively would push us past the deadline for a submittal, and this would become a 2027 application instead of a current application.
Okay, thank you. I mean, personally, having, I think that this seems like a wise move, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Commissioner Engelhardt.
Yeah, in the memo, on the first page, the second to last sentence, other funding sources and just now the referenced hydrology study. I understand there's something like $70,000 to $80,000 available possibly through the Board of Water, Soil, and Resource Conservation. Is that what we're talking about for the hydrology study?
President Olson, Commissioner Engelhardt, James Schaefer will step forward and answer that. He's more connected to that effort and can probably speak directly to it.
Yeah, so as we were doing our investigations on this project, there's a couple of pots of money from other agencies that are on the table for us to utilize for the hydrology portion of this. There is approximately $70,000 from the Basses Creek Watershed Commission to perform a hydrology study, and approximately $80,000 from Bowser for engineering and design development, both of which are not fully committed yet, and both of which I think would be imperative of us to do ahead of actually submitting this project. So part of our intent is to continue to move forward with both of those organizations and keep this rolling in this way while we postpone the actual Lessard-Sams portion of the project.
Okay, is that all? Okay. Commissioner Benny.
A quick question then, would there be a substitute project that would be applying for the Lessard-Sams this year?
President Olson, Commissioner Benning, there would not be.
Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, President Olson. I move for a one-cycle continuance on this resolution.
Okay, is that the right technically, or would we just postpone it?
I think it's a motion to table or postpone. We treat them as the same.
So let's see, postpone until the time.
I think he's saying one cycle, I think was his motion.
Okay, I think we get it. Yeah, I think that works. So I'll second that. Any discussion further on postponing? Commissioner Benny.
So to clarify, one cycle means one application cycle for Lessard-Sams, or what's the, or?
So technically, my motion is to review this in 2 weeks or at our next meeting, which would push us past the deadline for the application for Lessard-Sams, which
Okay.
is the intent of the memorandum we received.
Is that true that only 2 weeks are needed?
President Olson, I would just offer this. I think a postponement is fine. Eventually, if you do postpone it, you will have to take action, and I don't think we would want to put the board in the position of having to have you vote for or against an environmental project of significance like this. So if there were a motion to postpone it for one funding cycle of this application, that might actually be a more appropriate way to look at this. If Councilor Rice, if that kind of a motion could be in order.
Mr. President, if the author wants to amend his motion based on that advice, that would be their decision.
I will amend my motion to postpone this for one Lessard-Sams application cycle, which would push this back to 2027. I just want to make sure that we're all aware that that means that this is just going to hang out for a while, and we will have to, I'm sure, be reminded by staff when it is time to reconsider.
Okay. Commissioner Benny, to that.
Yeah, and to this motion, and I'm wondering if there's any, should it, when it goes back to the, in front of the board, should it go back into the planning committee? And I know that that's somewhat related to the motion on the table, but I wonder if it should go back to the planning committee for discussion, because it's come from the planning committee. And also, one more thing, do we need to suspend the rules for, no? Okay.
Okay.
President
Assistant
Olson,
Superintendent.
Commissioner Bennett, get my steps in tonight. I think actually referring it essentially back to the committee might be important, because we will have gained additional information, can provide more context on the whole of the project at that time.
Okay. So we can tag on and refer back to planning committee.
Yes, I will again amend my motion to postpone consideration of this.
Admin and finance. Sorry.
Admin.
Admin and finance.
Yes, I'll amend my motion to postpone this for one application cycle and return the proposal to the Admin and Finance Committee.
Okay, I'll second that. All right, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, we will return to this soon in the future. Well, not super soon. Okay, 5:33, we will now move on to open time. I'll read the open time rules. Thanks to those of you who have come to speak during tonight's open time. The board's open time rules are as follows. I will call on people from the speaker list only. Names are added to the speaker list by calling in before 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting or by adding it in person at the board meeting before 5:30 p.m. The time allotted for all speakers shall not exceed 15 minutes. We have 2 speakers, so they will each be allotted 3 minutes. Time may not be transferred to someone else. Please watch the timer and stay within your allotted time. This is an opportunity for you to address the board. We are listening but will not respond. That said, please don't hesitate to contact any of the commissioners for dialogue and further discussion. To protect the privacy of individuals, please refrain from commenting on specific personnel issues or pending litigation. Discriminatory or harassing words directed at anyone will not be tolerated. Each speaker is asked to state their name and address. Up first is Billy Menz and then Ron Werner.
Hi, I'm Billy Menz. I live at 1812 Pierce Street Northeast in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Always great to see you all. I'm going to lean down a little bit. It's amazing. I've even sat up there and you still get nervous talking because there's things that are important out there that I really care about that I'm hoping that this board will continue work on. I think that the group may have been updated on the Indigenous action and things, but the one thing in our neighborhood that I'm really hoping to share with the board is we have the Pioneers Monument. At the end of the session last year, we were guaranteed that that monument would come down this year. And I know that there's a $250,000 price tag on that monument being removed. I'm wanting to remind the board and maybe even ask Assistant Superintendent Schroeder to recall that we did have an opportunity to fund part of it. And I'm worried that the board might not feel like we have a responsibility financially to remove that monument as well. We accepted that monument from the city. Current Councilmember Rainville wasn't included in that and now is supportive of its removal. It is doing harm to the community, specifically the Indigenous community, every day that it stands up. And it's an opportunity for us to stand up to something visually that is happening in our world, which is a change of narrative. And I think it's really important for us to make sure that we are continuing that work, that we find the money to remove that monument as soon as possible, like was guaranteed. And maybe Assistant Superintendent Schroeder can help another board member find. There was a fund, and I can't remember, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder is really good at finding locations of money opportunities for these types of projects. So hopefully he can help me recall that as well. Also, I mean, it's great to see so many parks activated. I mean, my park, Northeast Park, is a terrific example of where just so much activation can provide energy for the park. We have a gay softball league every Sunday. We have lots of things going on in the neighborhood. Yinghua Academy has complete activity of that park during the day. So thank you for all of the maintenance. I've watched the fields be maintained in a way that's much more effective, and partially because of the work of Assistant Superintendent Schroeder in creating some manuals on how to do that. So I'm really encouraged by that work. I would really encourage this board also to remember that we completed one field tack around diamonds and had a lot of productivity around that with the community engagement, but we still have to move on to field spaces to make sure that we're using those effectively and providing equity. So just a little reminder of some of the things that I personally worked on, but also that I think are really imperative for the goals of this board as well. So thank you all for your service.
Thank you, Billy. Welcome, Ron.
Good evening. Ron Warner, west side of Cedar Lake, resident for 35 years now. Temporary encroachment permits. At the Met Council Parks and Trails Committee concerning approval of the Cedar Isles Master Plan, Park Planner Adam Arvinson asserted that the temporary encroachment permits issued in 1938 are legal permits at Southeast Cedar Lake. This statement needs to be challenged. I'm going in full disclosure AI mode. AI question: would it be legal for a park board to allow temporary encroachment permits to be valid for 87 years? Answer: an 87-year encroachment permit for public parkland would likely be considered illegal and a breach of public trust. An 87-year duration is generally considered the functional equivalent of a permanent lease or an alienation of the land. Here are the key reasons why this would be illegal. Temporary does not mean 87 years. The definition of temporary for public land permits is usually very short term. An 87-year period goes far beyond any reasonable definition of temporary and essentially grants private long-term control over public property. And that's exactly what's happened there. Breach of the public trust doctrine. The public trust doctrine prevents government entities, i.e. the park board, from alienating or transferring assets, parkland, for private purposes, nor materially impair their value, accessibility, or functionality for the public. Granting 87-year-old permits, for private use is a violation of the public trust doctrine. Fails to meet fiduciary duty. The park board, as a trustee of the public land, has a duty to manage the land prudently and for the benefit of all beneficiaries, the public. A court would likely view an 87-year private permit as an abdication of this duty. In conclusion, an 87-year temporary encroachment permit is fundamentally inconsistent with the legal framework governing public lands and would likely be found unlawful. And one further point, in 2013, there was a AIS memo put out, and a consulting firm, real estate consultants, Renee Leon and Karen Peterson, were called on to find out, could docks be inspected? Whoopsie. I just want to read the answer. It is highly unlikely, however, that none of the property owners to whom the original permit was issued still owns the property, and that any permit previously issued should have expired. So there's legal precedents all over the place about temporary permits, and something should be done about it. Thanks, you.
Ron. With that, I will now close open time, and we are now on to Resolution 2026-89.
I'd like to move resolution accepting the nomination and initiating the public hearing process to rename McCray Park to Wallace Jack O'Neill Jackman Park as proposed by Dr. Tonya Jackson Hampton.
A second?
Second.
All right. So actually, a little bit of a psych out here. I don't know if we needed to move it first, but the folks who put forward the nomination had a work conflict and so aren't able to attend. So I think it's probably best and fair, and behooves the board and the discussion and the renaming of this that we postpone until our next meeting. Just wanted to let folks know that is, so I will move to postpone resolution 2026-89 until our next meeting, which is on June 3rd. Okay.
Second.
Okay, any discussion to that? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, we will return to this in 2 weeks. New business, would someone please move resolution 2026-95?
I'd like to move resolution 2026-95, resolution expressing the Minneapolis Park and Recreations Board opposition to and deep concern about the Minneapolis Department of Transportation, MnDOT, redesign of Highway 280 to close the northbound left turn lane from Highway 280 onto Broadway Street Northeast, and the effect of that decision will have on the Park Board's plan to complete the missing link of the Grand Rounds on the parallel roadway of Industrial Boulevard from East Hennepin Avenue to Broadway Street Northeast, and calling on MnDOT to change its decision.
We have a second.
Second.
On to discussion.
I'd like to introduce a substitute motion.
Okay, Vice President Deshpande, so would this be treated as an amendment or by just introducing a substitute motion? Is that the right thing? Okay, on to your substitute motion.
Okay, I'll introduce substitute motion resolution 2026-95, a resolution expressing the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's concerns about the Minnesota Department of Transportation's MnDOT redesign of Highway 280 to close the northbound left turn lane from Highway 280 onto Broadway Street Northeast, and the effect that decision could have on the Park Board's plans for the missing link of the Grand Rounds.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion to the substitute motion? Commissioner Engelhardt.
Yeah, Vice President Deshpande and I worked together on this amendment. I hope you all would pass it because we listened, we heard you at our last meeting and, made some substantial edits with other commissioners' feedback. And the language is a bit softer. We're not directing the city to do anything in particular. So those are some of the changes there. Just before this meeting, Vice President Deshpande and I were with MnDOT staff and Park Board planning staff. We're working through this issue to make sure it has not only the potential impacts on the mid-city industrial portion of the mid-city prairie of the current missing link in the Ground Rounds, but also overall the inequities in Southeast Como and the impacts on the neighborhoods and the inequities in green space in particular onto East Hennepin. But point being is that we made some pretty significant changes with your feedback and would hope that with that it'll pass.
Okay. All right, so the vote now is to substitute this motion. Further discussion on that? All those in favor of the, having the substitute forward come before us, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, with that, we have this new resolution in front of us. Is there discussion to the resolution as it stands? Vice President Deshpande.
Thank you, President Olson, and thank you to Commissioner Engelhardt for bringing this issue forward. I've heard of many District 1 residents who are concerned about this change, and ultimately the edits to the resolution are meant to suggest and also just open dialogue. It's not meant to direct, it's not meant to force an issue, but we are hoping that it will create some discussion and also recognize the concerns that a number of people have about this change. And so really the intent is to create some more dialogue and some more opening for the public to be involved, but then also for us to recognize as a board that we do have an interest in this. It's going to affect the grand rounds in ways that maybe we understand, maybe we don't, but the further review that we can get out of this, I think, is going to be beneficial regardless, and it won't harm anybody, and it won't harm any relationships either. It's meant to create dialogue.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia?
Yeah, I was also fortunate enough to be briefed by MnDOT, and I just wanted to call out the fact that the potential turn lane closure is not scheduled for the existing project that is happening right now. That is something that is scheduled for a 2028 timeline. So by adopting this resolution, we wouldn't be delaying any active construction projects or things like that. This would just give some park board request to MnDOT to do better outreach to the affected communities so that we can see the best possible result in the end. Thank you.
Commissioner Benny?
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that you guys worked on this, that this was worked on. I guess I would still say that this, I think, is better in a letter form, on letterhead from whoever wants to sign it. And that I feel like one thing that got dropped from the original resolution now, though, is the comments about the 4F stuff and the focus there, which I thought maybe had some merit. So again, I'm not really, I don't see that there's a tie into the grand rounds, and I feel like this is really outside of the jurisdiction of the park board. And I think that, our partners at the state who have been very generous to us this year and really helped the park system with, when you see the presentation on the results of the legislative session, you'll see, might want a different form of communication than this kind of a resolution coming out of the board, because it really won't have an impact. It doesn't have any power, and MnDOT would respond just as well, I think, to the kinds of meetings you've had today, facilitating discussions on behalf of the people that you're hearing from. There may be a lot of other people, I have no idea, that feel relieved that this maybe dangerous change is going to be, taken off of 280, this dangerous situation. So I'm not going to be supporting this. I don't think this is a park board issue, so.
Commissioner Forney?
Thank you. I basically agree with Commissioner Benny, and wondering, if this is our jurisdiction. I'll just say that it is directing somebody to do more community outreach. What I want to make sure is that that obligation doesn't fall on us, although frankly, we do the best, as far as I'm concerned, in any governmental jurisdiction. So I just want to make sure that that does not happen, because staff is at capacity, and they already have done a significant amount of, interplay as far as what is applicable to the grand rounds. And I've seen the designs, and so much has been taken into consideration. And to me, the exciting thing is the fact that without this happening, we wouldn't be able to further the finishing of the grand rounds in this particular areas, being that MnDOT is going to be paying for a significant section of this. So I guess, yeah, I will be voting no against this as well. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yeah, so I will just say a couple words. I think, Commissioner Benny, to your point on the 4F process, I happen to know that Commissioner Deshpande Vice President Deshpande is currently working on something to that effect, so we will be hopefully seeing something like that as staff are looking at it, because I agree there was absolutely merit there. I do think it's kind of an edge case here, whether or not we are necessarily involved here. But I think, it's close enough to, and the impact is close enough to our future endeavors that I do think it's worth considering. And I also, think that certainly it's our responsibility as commissioners, as we're seeing, Commissioner Engelhardt doing to, represent community members and to, support kind of their desires and needs. I don't see anything in this resolution that would necessarily obligate us to any more staff time or resources or input. I also think there are some solid, potential, compromises or other ways where we can still achieve the safety methods that, if they're looked at appropriately, that, I think is worth consideration. That said, if, we do this and MnDOT comes back and says that the plan they have is the right plan, that is something that I will agree with and, move forward with, just because, again, the safety issues are real. And it is a bit on the edge, but I'm happy to be taking this step, and I'll be voting yes. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
With that, the resolution is approved and carried forward. Someone move on to the next, please.
I will move Resolution 2026-103, resolution accepting the bequest of $52,628.93 from the estate of Mildred E. Noreen and direct the funds to the Capital Projects Fund Minnehaha Regional Park Improvements Project.
Second?
Any discussion? Vice President Deschamande.
I just had a question about the benefit of the dollars coming directly to us versus going to the Park Foundation. Is there some kind of tax benefit or other advantage to the state?
We don't have Director Wiseman.
President Olson, Vice President Deshpande, Director Weissman is unable to be here this evening, and she asked me to sub in for questions, and this is one that's tricky for me to answer. I do know that there is an administrative fee that the Parks Foundation does utilize to operate their fundraising efforts. And so presumably a direct donation that came to us directly and wasn't cultivated by the Parks Foundation could then be entirely utilized for capital investment. Might be the advantage to come for this coming directly to us, because my understanding is that it did come directly to us and not via the Parks Foundation, but any more in the weeds, and I would have to check in with Director Weissman.
Okay, thank you.
Council Rice.
Yeah, if I can comment, occasionally over the years, we have received donations like this, or the park board has, and a donation to a government entity is considered a tax exempt or deductible donation. As we've gotten into it, the park board actually shares the same taxpayer identification number as the city of Minneapolis. Over the years, we've looked at separating that for a number of reasons. One could be that if the park board were to have its own taxpayer identification number, you could literally set up an account inside the park system, but that's a little bit more complicated. But I think the donation, once it's received, would probably be assigned the estate. If they needed the tax deduction, it could be considered tax exempt or qualified deduction to a charitable government organization.
Okay, anything further, Vice President Deschamande? You're done? Okay. Secretary Ringgold.
Yeah, I believe we provide them the same documentation they need from their taxes that anybody else would. So they'll be set. It's truly the aspect that Director Arvidsson, in terms of there not being a fee taken out of it.
Okay. Commissioner Forney.
Yes, I just want to make sure people understand that as far as we do have an endowment, that's a new thing and everything. And as far as the amount of money that the Parks Foundation charges, okay, I'm not going to get into the details. I'm sure Secretary Ringel could remind me. But after we get to a certain amount, it does reduce substantially. And so let's put it this way. We're getting our money's worth in the sense of, what their guidance is, what their campaigning, whatever, is definitely of value and everything. So I'm very grateful for this particular donation. And as Councilor Rice says, we have received numerous in the past, and I'm grateful for all of those. But we are making a concerted effort through the foundation with the endowment in particular. Just want to make sure people realize that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mildred E. Noreen, for your generosity. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 2026-103, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, it is approved. I will now recess the full board meeting. As we do have a couple things coming up from planning, it's been requested that we move on to planning directly rather than at the end of our additional meetings here. So we will now move on to Planning Committee.
Thank you, President Olson. At 5:57, I will call into order this meeting of the Planning Committee. Secretary Ringgold, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Carbajal Moran.
Aye.
Commissioner Vice President Deshpande.
Here.
Commissioner Engelhardt.
Here.
Vice Chair Forney.
Here.
Chair Garcia.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, so our first order of business is the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Great. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none?
Just to note that 2 items will be coming up to the full board, and they are, what were they? 2026-97 and 2026-99.
Thank you, Vice Chair Forney. Any further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstention? Great, we have an agenda.
I'll move as a slate the Planning Committee minutes of April 15th, 2026, Planning Committee minutes of April 29, 2026, and Planning Committee minutes of May 6, 2026, which is D 2026-50 and D 2026-55 and D 2026-60. Hopefully I got that right.
Thank you, Vice Chair Forney. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, those pass. Next up, we have our action items.
I'll move Resolution 2026-97, a resolution approving temporary construction easement to the City of Minneapolis for Hennepin Avenue Improvement Project adjacent to Gateway Park.
All right, do we have any discussion on this? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, that motion passes, and we'll move on to the full board.
The next resolution is 2026-99, resolution granting a permanent easement to City of Minneapolis for the East River Terrace Sewer Rehabilitation Project located at East River Parkway within Mississippi Gorge Regional Park.
Thank you, Vice Chair Forney. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 2026-99, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, that also passes on to the full board. And with that, we are on to our study item, which will be presented to us by Carol Hailstone, Design Project Manager, along with some folks from outside agencies.
Oh, oops.
We might have caught her at a bad time.
Chair Garcia, we believe Ms. Halstone is downstairs collecting people for this part of the presentation. So if you just give us a minute, we'll bring everybody up.
Oh,
All right, I will put us in a brief recess. Let's say come back at 6:10.
Thank you, 610.
6:10. Okay.
Okay. All right. So, as we wait for planning committee, it's been suggested that we move back to the full board because we have some easy items to approve that were just moved from planning. So I will reconvene the full board. And would someone please move resolution 2026-97?
On behalf of the planning committee, I will move resolution 2026-97. Resolution approving temporary construction easement to City of Minneapolis for Hennepin Avenue Improvement Project adjacent to Gateway Park.
So moved. Second.
Secretary Ringgold. Oh, yeah.
Okay, yep.
Roll call.
Yes. Any discussion? Seeing none. Secretary Ringgold, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Abeni.
Aye.
Commissioner Carbajal Moran.
Aye.
Commissioner Engelhardt. Absent. Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Commissioner Frederick. Absent. Commissioner Garcia.
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker.
Aye.
Vice President Deshpande. Absent. President Olson.
Aye.
You have 6 ayes, 3 absent.
And with that, the resolution is approved.
All right. On behalf of the planning committee, I will move resolution 2026-99. Resolution granting a permanent easement to City of Minneapolis for the East River Terrace Sewer Rehabilitation Project located at East River Parkway within Mississippi Gorge Regional Park.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none. Secretary Ringgold, please call the roll.
Commissioner Abeni.
Aye.
Commissioner Carbajal Moran.
Aye.
Commissioner Engelhardt. Absent. Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Commissioner Frederick. Absent. Commissioner Garcia.
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker.
Aye.
Vice President Deshpande. Absent. President Olson.
Aye.
You have 6 ayes, 3 absent.
And with that, resolution 2026-99 is approved. Okay, and yeah, we can go on to positions and communications. We'll start with you, Commissioner Abeni.
I feel like I should say something so that there's an opportunity to kill some time for the other commissioners to get back to the dais, but I will pass.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, President Olson. We're going to hear a little bit more in a bit this evening about the final legislative session report. But I did want to mention that due to the bonding bill passing. One of the projects in my district in Loring Park, the Burger Fountain, received funding that the neighborhood has been working for a long time, is very excited about receiving, and we will be holding a press conference tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. at the site of the Burger Fountain. It is a joint press conference with the Citizens for a Loring Park Community and the Friends of Loring Park. And I would just like to extend the invitation to all of my colleagues to attend to help this neighborhood and community celebrate the great win that we had in our legislature.
Thank you for that. It was tomorrow at what time?
Tomorrow at 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Okay, thank you for that. Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. Wasn't going to say anything, but being that somebody's present, I will mention it and everything. I'm very grateful that I went to the powwow over at Phillips on the Mother's Day weekend and everything, and our wonderful liaison and everything gifted me with a ribbon skirt, and I'm so grateful. And the energy there was just amazing. It's just really, it's exciting to see that space so activated. And yes, President Olson and I were at the Open Trails and Rails kickoff. I'm sure it was a community ride that we all did, but how exciting it is to have that trail open again. I mean, it has just been a nightmare for, I think, so many of us and everything. And I think that's it. I probably could say more, but that's enough.
Commissioner Carvajal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
The most important
Tisk, tisk.
thing, my role. Okay, yes, I'm embarrassing him. And that is that this weekend, our Assistant Superintendent of Planning will be having another birthday, and we will do our best to not embarrass him. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Michael. Just to update the returning commissioners, we decided to utilize the time to go back to the full board, pass those two planning items. We're now in petitions and communications before we'll adjourn and return to planning. Commissioner Carvajal Moran.
Yes, so I just want to give a huge shout out to all the Friends organizations and all our volunteers. I had the opportunity to volunteer with the Friends of Minneapolis Park. They taught me how to remove buckthorn, and boy, it's a lot of work, a lot of carrying, cutting, but ultimately just the appreciation for parks and just for new plants to grow. Just, I don't know, it was just very warm, and they wanted me to extend an invitation. They do have, this Saturday, they're gonna continue cutting buckthorn at the Minnehaha Falls. I forgot where they meet, but I can send that information out. But more than anything, just appreciation for our volunteers that also support us in making our parks looking beautiful. And yeah, also shout out to our natural area staff. Yeah, it was a lot of work, so just my respects. So thank you.
Commissioner, Vice President Deshpande.
Thank you. I really loved Open Doors a couple weeks back. I spent more than a few hours at the superintendent's home and learned a lot, met a lot of constituents. It's amazing history. I met our park historian. I met descendants of Theodore Wirth and Robert Rui, who's one of our former superintendents in the 1960s and 70s. And I will be introducing a formal motion that will allow me to spend more time in your house. So expect that soon. The other thing I did was the Phillips Blocks parties last weekend. Those were super fun. There were 10. I managed to get to all 10. It's amazing and fun to meet so many constituents and see them out and about in their beautiful neighborhood and just enjoying each other's company, especially after such a hard winter. And then lastly, yesterday, President Olson, Superintendent Bangor, and I were at the ribbon cutting for Stewart Park, which is also extremely exciting because that park has seen a lot of change, a new playground, a revamped softball field, and a new interior to the rec center. So I'm really thankful to the staff because the community noticed it quite a bit. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Rucker.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank our lobbying team, staff, with these bonding bills, $6 million going to North Commons in my district, Minneapolis Park Foundation. There are so many people that were voicing that we need this in North Minneapolis. Coach Tate, a lot of people. So I just wanted to thank everybody, staff, superintendent, everybody that was involved with this over at the Capitol. I was always on the phone talking to our representatives in the north side, so just want to thank everybody.
Thanks for that. Commissioner Frederick.
Absolutely. Took the idea right out of my head, Commissioner Rucker. There's so many wonderful staff members and lobbying teams of the lobbying team to thank. And I know this was a historic investment year, which is incredible. So I'm really looking forward to the momentum that we can continue on, given this really important resolution to the bonding bill. So thank you everybody who had a hand in it, and hope to be a good steward as we continue forward. Also got to attend Art Whirl this last week in Commissioner Englehart's district, and the amount of fun that I saw community having was such a relief. It was just such a brilliant display of creativity and community for all ages, our littlest park member, our park goers to our eldest park goers. Spending time enjoying the creative pursuits in the parks brought me so much joy. So I'd love to hear about what people found and what people did at Art World, because it's always just such a unique experience no matter where you start. You'll always find something fun to do. So yeah, thanks to all of our amazing event staff who made the park a beautiful place for Art World to happen, and to the surrounding community members and businesses that participated in the event. It was really, really fun.
Commissioner Engelhardt.
Yeah, also, that's great. We got bonding money for North Commons and other projects. That is so. Props to staff and everyone that worked on that. And I'll be talking about things that now that we can, finish up North Commons, and that's great. Some things I think we need to look towards the future. But also, yes, Logan Park was activated for Art Whirl, and it's something coming in as the District 1 Commissioner. I wanted to see more of that, and I was like, oh, it's just happening? Like, I didn't even have to do anything, so it was pretty cool. The park director there, Sarah Richards, said, yeah, I said yes to it when it came along. So however that came to be, good work to everyone, because it was really activated, and I think we can look at more. I mean, Logan Park's just the perfect location, given the activity of Art Whirl, but so it was really cool. And what more can we do for future Art Whirls? It was great. The music was great. The vibes were immaculate. So good job there, everybody. Moving on to Saturday morning of Art Whirl, I was pretty tired because I got up early to go spend some time in those peatlands and in and around Eloise Butler. So I figuring out, making sure we can get that money from those two different sources and get that hydrological study done and save those peat bogs. I'm convinced that that's probably the biggest action we can take on climate, to not allow those to die out and release all that carbon, and it's a carbon sink, so want to really focus on that. So my weekend wasn't all Art Whirl, it was also one of our priorities of our natural areas, and we have great stewards there. Get to Eloise Butler and the surrounding. It's real hiking, as some people will say. And then that said, we heard, and thank you, prior District 1 Commissioner Billy Menz, that we do need to figure out how to get the money and get that so-called Pioneer statue out of BF Nelson, currently called BF Nelson Park. And meeting with there's some great constituents that are really active in City of Skate, Northeast Skate Park Trust. And, that's currently being skated on. I think, could we move some of that large stone around and make it something that could be skated? I think that's something to be thinking about. Maybe that's a lower cost way to do it, with some of that stone and less movement of that. And then also, going to be really talking to all of you commissioners and community and everyone about, it's been over a decade that folks have wanted a destination skate park in Northeast Park, so I'm going to be pushing and advocating for that, and there's going to be different things, and folks will be coming here during open time and that sort of thing. So I want to really drive that home and make that destination skate park happen, really active. You know, people will activate that for sure, and get skateboarding more and more wheeled activities out there. So, yeah, thank you. And then, of course, the work continues on the, you know, as the chair of the CER, meeting with management tomorrow, just a, you know, kind of a relational meeting and talking about this change with the new committee of the Committee of Employee Relations, and the fact that I attend labor management and what that's like to have commissioner, not only myself, but us more engaged as a board of commissioners than in the past. So just making sure we're all on, you know, similar, same pages and good relationship on the management side of things. So, yep, that's what I got. Thanks.
All right, and yeah, my update. So the Minneapolis Commission on Civil Rights sent us a letter asking us about the open park rights process. Superintendent Bangora, Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, Carol Hailstone, and I went and visited with them on Monday. Carol and I presented, kind of going over history, motivation of the project and what it is encompassing. And we had a dialogue there. And so look forward to continuing that dialogue and being open with those folks. And so that was very productive as we continue forward with that work. With that, I will adjourn the full board at 6:17.
All right, I will reconvene the planning committee meeting. I see Carol is here. Are we ready to start? All right, then we will begin our discussion item. And I will turn it over to Carol Hailstone from Planning.
Is this on? Good evening, Commissioners. I'm excited to introduce some members of the Dakota community, the National Park Service, and the Minnesota Historical Society tonight to present a study item to you around Minneapolis. Some really important background and cultural context for the board to understand. So I'm excited tonight we have with us Juanita Espinosa. She is a member of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Native American Parks Council. We also have with us Tucker Blythe, who is the superintendent of the Mississippi National Recreation Area as part of the National Park Service. Along with him, Peggy Varigan, who is a cultural resources program manager with the National Park Service. David Kelleher, who is the Vice President of Public Policy and Government Relations for the Minnesota Historical Society, and then Jennifer Rankin, who is the Director of Archaeology with the Minnesota Historical Society. So with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters for this evening and look forward to their presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much for our time here today. As you can, I better forward the slide. As you can see on this slide, the area of Minneapolis is a checkerboard of land management and stewardship today. Federal management or ownership of the land began back in 1820 with the establishment of Fort Snelling. Fort Snelling lasted in this area until 1946 when the fort property was turned over to the Veterans Administration. In 1949, the Bureau of Mines, which is a bureau within the Department of the Interior, began constructing a storage facility to house cores drilled by both that bureau and private companies. And in 1951, the Veterans Administration transferred land to the Bureau of Mines, and eventually 11 buildings were constructed in the area and became the 27-acre Bureau of Mines Twin Cities Research Center main campus. In 1996, Congress abolished the Bureau of Mines, and the campus was closed. From 96 to 2010, another bureau of the Department of the Interior, the Fish and Wildlife Service, had day-to-day management of that parcel of land. After a disposition study, the National Park Service, the NPS, assumed management of the former Bureau of Mines campus. That was in 2010. And we were directed to remove any remaining buildings from the Bureau of Mines and to restore and provide public access to the area. So the old Bureau of Mine buildings were demolished, and in 2011, ecological restoration in this area began. The area was reopened to the public as an open space in 2012. In that time period and throughout, we have consulted with 22 affiliated tribes for our park, including the 4 Minnesota Dakota tribes. And through the last 16 years, restoration work at Minneapolis has been done in collaboration with the tribes and in coordination with the state and the VA, as you saw the adjacent properties. Thousands of staff and volunteer hours have been poured into this land to remove invasive species and restore the oak and savanna prairie at this site. David.
Good evening, I'm David Kelleher from the Minnesota Historical Society. Get technology working here. We're going to go through, my colleague Jen Rankin and I are going to tag team on this, but we're going to quickly go through some of the background of the work that we do in the Fort Snelling area and some of the statutory obligations that we have that will inform some of the conversations that you will have a little down the road. We're guided by Minnesota statutes, chapter 138. For the operation of the Historic Sites Network, we operate 26 sites, one of which is historic Fort Snelling, and the Camp Coldwater area adjacent to the property that we're talking about here. Historic preservation in general is also guided by chapter 138, as well as archaeology. I want to note also, we're talking about a bunch of laws, but this is people and this is people's history. We are guided in our work by a Native American Initiatives team, about a half dozen staff members on the Minnesota Historical Society staff who work in all areas of our work, publications, historic sites, educational programs, and we are also guided by an Indian Advisory Committee, which has appointees from the 11 federally recognized tribes and education and urban Native Americans. That committee has been in place since 1988, so we have a long tradition of working on these issues, being informed. We learn new things all the time, and it's an ongoing process. A little additional context for the area. There are a lot of things called Fort Snelling, and just to set a little bit of context and also talk about the park board's role in this. This map shows the area in blue. In the middle of the map shows the historic fort that we operate. The areas in red are operated by or owned by the DNR, and the red in the middle, of course, you're very familiar with, is the ball fields, Neiman Fields in the middle of the greater Fort Snelling area. And then the area that we're spending some time talking about tonight is the area in green and blue at the top of this map. We have had a joint powers agreement that needs to be re-signed and reauthorized, but the joint powers agreement has been between National Park Service, DNR, Park Board, Minnesota Historical Society, Hennepin County, along with others who have joined in the conversations. And really that Joint Powers Board is a model for cooperation with government agencies. And there have been many accomplishments, including the Upper Post area that was redeveloped as a result of that work. And I think as we turn our attention within that group to other other projects, we'll be continuing to collaborate and use the relationships that were built through many years of working in joint powers to do the work in this area that we're working on next. Picking up on what Tucker talked about, the larger Fort Snelling area was established as a historical park initially by the state of Minnesota in 1961. 1969, the historic fort was Minnesota Historical Society was given responsibility for that. And then in 1973, the Bureau of Mines transferred the 21 acres, sometimes called Camp Coldwater. And again, going to that map, there's the various parcels that make up this area. So this has been designated as a in preservation or held for preservation site by the Minnesota Historical Society. We don't have visitors there. We don't actively encourage people to go there because of its cultural resource sensitivity. And as mentioned, we are dedicated to being good stewards of Minnesota history. That's what we do across the state at all of our sites. So I think you guys are back next.
I think you'll hear more about this in just a little while, but obviously the area is very culturally significant to our tribal governments that we work with, and it's steeped in millennia of culture and history. So to speak more about the cultural significance, I'm going to bring Peggy up. So.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to speak to you about the National Register of Historic Places. Minneapolis, which is part of the property that we administer. Minneapolis is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And for those who are unfamiliar, the National Register is the United States federal government's official list of sites, buildings, structures, objects, and districts worthy of preservation for their associations with history, significant people, architecture, or archaeology. Eligibility is dependent on meeting the program's criteria for significance and historic integrity. Minneapolis was listed in the National Register in 2023, significant under multiple criteria as a traditional cultural place, historically and culturally significant, associated with Dakota beliefs regarding the origin of the Dakota people at the Bdote and ceremonial traditions related to spiritual geography. Minneapolis is an active and vital part of Dakota life. There's a lengthy nomination process and just a very condensed version. The steps include working with the Park Service Federal Preservation Officer, the Federal National Register of Historic Places staff, and Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office National Register staff to ensure that the nomination meets all of the requirements of the program. The nomination requires in-depth research and writing to demonstrate the significance according to the program criteria. And once the nomination is complete, then it's presented to the Minnesota Preservation Review Board, and finally it's submitted to the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places in Washington, D.C. Again, that is so abbreviated. This process typically takes a couple years. It is a very, very in-depth process. It takes a lot of time and a lot of scholarly work and many layers of review to ensure that the property is appropriately documented. listing in the National Register ensures that all federal activity, including all projects undertaken at the park, proceed in consultation with tribal nations and with the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office. We consult with tribal nations to ask for their input as we develop projects. Our goal is always to avoid adverse effects. Okay, I don't know why it's not rolling. There we go.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Jennifer Rankin. I'm the Director of Archaeology. Knowing that we just talked about traditional cultural places, before I start with the archaeological significance, I did want to turn it to my Dakota colleagues to see if there's anything you guys wanted to jump in right now, or okay. All right, just wanted to make sure that you didn't want to say anything further about this. So talking about the archaeological significance of those parcels that we're speaking of, this area is located within the boundaries of the Fort Snelling National Historic Landmark, another program similar to what Peggy just described, and that was designated on December 19th, 1960. Also, it is within the boundaries of the Fort Snelling National Register Historic District. That was kind of an automatic nomination after that program was passed, and knowing that the National Historic Landmark was already established. National Historic Landmarks are probably the top designation for cultural sites, archaeological sites, historic sites. So the importance of the area is kind of noted through those landmark designations. In addition, the area is also within the boundaries of archaeological sites. In Minnesota, we and in the rest of the country, we use different designations. 21 means the state of Minnesota. HE stands for Hennepin County, and then 99 is the number of the archaeological site based on administrative paperwork. There is another site in the area as well too, but that is something that is adjacent to HE 99, the Fort Snelling site. So we kind of consider at one point, maybe they're both kind of the same site. What I'm pointing out here in this slide, the historical and archaeological context, I list a bunch of these right now because it kind of shows you the long period of history that we have on those parcels. But the one thing I actually really wanted to point out with this slide is the very first one here, right? It says ancestral Native American, 13,000 years to about 1600, 1800. And when you think about this, that is 13,000 years of history. And how can you, and then you start seeing things like, Camp Coldwater, 1820 to 1823. Camp Coldwater Settlement, 1821, 1840. Those are very short periods of time when you consider the long history that ancestral Native Americans have been present in this area. So I wanted to highlight this because what you're seeing here is those are the historical archaeological contexts that we have documented and we know that are present. And each one of these we can kind of indicate and look at in different ways, whether it is from foundations that are out there. Anybody who's walked those parcels knows that there's foundations out there. But other features that are out there and present, and we can represent and determine that all of these contexts are present. But the one I really wanted to highlight is that ancestral Native American. Yes, we have people who were here 13,000 years ago. We know this from different types of stone tools that we find throughout Fort Snelling, including kind of in this area. We also see different periods represented like 8,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We see that through the pottery that gets recovered. We also have copper that was produced through indigenous mining coming from Isle Royale and some of the Upper Peninsula and even in the Pine City area where we know copper mines existed. So there is that long history of people in this area that is well demonstrated for the Fort Snelling area. And so that is one of the reasons we are, that, you know, really kind of highlights and maybe doesn't get enough as attention as it deserves, considering the long history. It's easy to think about, you know, a couple, 20 years, 100 years, but thinking about that 13,000 years, that's something that I'm hoping that, I'm hopefully conveying to you.
I'll also just mention something that Jennifer said. You know, one of the other reasons that we know about that 13,000-year history is because our Native American partners, Dakota people, have told us. And so we know because they've told us. At the park and these National Register, the property, we work with federal statutes that relate to the nominated property and confidentiality. And so one of which, National Historic Preservation Act. This act provides legal authority for restricting information about properties listed in the National Register. The Secretary of the Interior, represented by the Keeper of the National Register, is authorized to withhold information if releasing it may cause significant invasion of privacy, risk harm to the historic place, or interfere with the use of a traditional religious site by practitioners. We also work with the Archaeological Resources Protection Act, known as ARPA, and that protects archaeological resources on public lands and Indian lands. Section 9A permits the withholding from the public of information concerning the nature and location of any archaeological resource. Because the TCP, the nominated property for Minneapolis, contains sensitive ethnographic information, including about Dakota ceremonial traditions, beliefs, and practices, and descriptions of the contributing features that are significant to Dakota culture, the National Register program has restricted it from public view and distribution. The Mississippi National River and Recreation Area will not share the nomination in compliance with these restrictions.
And I'm just going to cover some of the state laws and regulations that kind of guide our work. One that we have in Minnesota is the Field Archaeology Act. This protects and preserves and manages archaeological resources on non-federal public lands. The act also establishes a state-issued licensing program and system for qualified archaeologists conducting any sort of archaeological investigations on non-federal public lands in Minnesota. It also ensures agency compliance between other different agencies like the Department of Natural Resources, Minnesota Department of Transportation, and then also imposes penalties for violations of any of the Act's provisions. The next one I wanted to indicate here is the Private Cemeteries Act. The Private Cemeteries Act ensures that all human remains, all human burials, and all human burial grounds over 50 years old are protected and treated equally and with respect for human dignity without reference to their ethnic origins, cultural backgrounds, or religious affiliations. This section also applies to all public lands. In addition, it also includes private lands and waters in Minnesota. And the next one I wanted to mention, kind of similar to the federal law and in accordance with the National Historic Preservation Act, full access to detailed archaeological and burial records is reserved for qualified archaeologists, historic preservation professionals, tribal historic preservation offices. Similar to that, one thing with a qualified archaeologist, there's guidance on what a qualified archaeologist is that includes that they meet the standards for the Secretary of Interior that is set forth with the National Park Service. Any archaeological and burial records and reports are managed by the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council and the Office of the State Archaeologist.
So with the traditional cultural place designation, and in consultation with our 22 affiliated tribes, we place signs in the area of Minneapolis back in September to help people learn more about the significance of this place. As it says on the slide, there have been about 707 scans as of the 13th. I looked it up today. 734 scans of that QR code, which takes people to our website and will allow folks to learn more about the significance of this place.
Good evening. Ihani Washte. I'm sorry that I'm the last person because I didn't know we were going to be interrupting your agenda to be earlier, so my apologies. But my name is Juanita Corbine Espinosa. I'm both Dakota and Ojibwe. I've lived in the Twin Cities about 50 years now. And with that, when I came here to go to school and to be educated a little more. Couldn't work and go to school on my res because they didn't have that kind of opportunities for us back then. And our college just opened up and I was one of the first students. So I was happy to be there, but I also wanted to get an education. And when I came to Minnesota, I didn't know for probably about maybe a good 20 years of my life here that we were actually from here. So you can imagine both the education I got at home, the education that I got in the city, no one ever told me. And who told me was my relatives from Canada who came down from Sioux Valley and said, you know, you're the first one from the whole family that has decided to move to Minnesota. So I was like kind of impressed by that. So I've participated in many significant, what I call significant activities in the Twin Cities that have honored my relatives. And in conjunction with you, when the Walker Art Center did the piece along with Edgar Heapabirds, did the piece along the river with the Abraham Lincoln signs that he made. And from that, I started to learn more. And I think that opportunity for me, well, I've always been honored to be American Indian and Dakota and Ojibwe and to carry that responsibility. I'm also an older child. I've always tried to recognize that, and I tell my kids this, that this is all our land, you know? So I wanted to congratulate you because when I tell my kids that, I'm telling them that because as human beings, we were born to take care of this place. We weren't born to own it. We weren't born to, you know, dictate anything about it. We were born to take care of this place, each and every one of us as human beings. And so as a Dakota woman and a mother, I made sure I told my kids that because that was more important to me than saying we're Dakota and we're in our homeland. It was important for me that I tell them, you know, well, where is our land? And I'd say, it's everywhere. That's our water, that's our land, that's our tree, you know, and they're here for us for a reason. And what is that? You know, and how do we honor that? So with Minneapolis, keep in mind, our historical ancestors, that's how you stayed here. If we didn't have that water there, you wouldn't have been here. You would have gone farther west, you would have gone somewhere else because that was the only clean water that you could drink from. And so the fact that we, after all these years, have finally participated in reclaiming and resettling and understanding our relationship to each other and to caring for the land, have done some really incredibly beautiful things. That took us a long, long time to come to the same table to recognize. And so I'm really honored that each and every one of you stepped up to represent your area and your recognition of the importance of the land here in the Twin Cities and the care that it needs and the kind of care that it needs. And so I'm really honored that you would allow me to speak tonight just because I think Minneapolis and other sites around the Twin Cities, actually it's all needs care. You know, it doesn't really matter if it's Park Board or if it's a city. It all needs care and it all needs consideration. And the water needs consideration, the trees need consideration, the plants need consideration. And we can't forget that, you know, but as human beings, we're all part of that family that's responsible for caring for her. And what we do for her, she'll do for us. And so I think those are the things that preface a lot of the work I try to do and try to express. And I'm really honored that, you know, people are citing laws and stuff, but if you'll notice, those laws have been in place, so I shouldn't even be here. You should already know that the law says, don't mess with this land, right? So why am I here, you know? And that was kind of what Frankie, my coworker guy, was supposed to come in, you know, he said, why are you going? And I said, well, because they asked me to, you know, and I want to really preface that to all of you, that I don't go places that I'm not invited. I don't know how many of you guys do that, but I choose not to. And that's mainly because of, you know, why I put myself in that place. So today I'm here because you invited me and because I'm part of the committee that tries really hard to figure out ways to express the importance of our responsibility as human families that take care of this land and to recognize when people are not and point it out. So I think there was, I'm trying to remember what else I was supposed to say. Not that anyone was telling me what to say. By no means, I don't think anybody could tell me what to say. But I think for me, it's what's really important is that when you look at Minneapolis, you recognize that all the care that went into from all my relatives throughout the Twin Cities and throughout the region that came and planted there, that came and put things there, that our relatives and I know you guys all know about the Dakota skipper there, and Dakota skipper is a piece of is a butterfly that's medicine to one of our relatives, the Sitting Bull's medicine. That was part of his care that he had a relationship to. And so for me, the fact that we're in a place in time when we're, as a community of people, recognizing the importance of what was here before and trying to restore some of that is really a gift to her, to the mother, to her, for her to hear that her children didn't forget what was important to us here in order to survive and to live. So if you have any questions, I'm open. If I haven't said enough, I'll say some more, but otherwise, I thank you for anything you need from me. You feel free to get a hold of Carrie or anyone to ask, and I'm more than happy. I've been an educator in the arts and culture field for a number of years in working with the artists throughout the state of Minnesota, throughout the country, throughout the international community, and I continue to work with our keeper of our buffalo calf pipe, Orville Looking Horse, and we're currently in the midst of planning for a run that's going from Greengrass, which is the home of the buffalo calf pipe, to Little Bighorn, which is a place that we are now recognizing we also have to play a role in reclaiming, because our current situation is apparently whitewashing the walls of the space there. So we are going to look at how we can create a voice for ourselves there. So we'll be out at the Little Bighorn gathering in June 24th. So I'm kind of in the middle of planning things for that, and including the run. So I'm really happy that our community has recognized the value of those things that we can do and will continue to do them. We didn't always have this this big a voice, but we've been building it, and we'll do World Peace and Prayer Days at Bear Butte in June 21st, which is a chance for us to bring all people together to recognize all faiths, all nations, one prayer. So if you realize each and every one of you your umbilical cord when you were born was potentially put into the ground somewhere, which, by the way, my daughter's umbilical cord was buried at Minneapolis. And so, no, it's my granddaughter, my daughter's daughter. And so it's my granddaughter. And so that, for me, it's like, that says we have to take care of that place because of her as well, you know, that she's tied to that land. And that's what we try to remind people with World Peace and Prayer Day, is the importance of connecting to the earth from where you came and be reminded of that message of care and that caretaking role that we all have in being here. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you all.
Wopilatanka, miigwech. Thank you to all of our speakers. I will now see if any of my colleagues have any discussion or questions they would like to raise while we have our guests here. Commissioner Engelhardt.
I mean, maybe I missed it, but I feel like and I want to thank you, everyone, for presenting, and yeah, it's very, very important to me, and I know all of us that we've gotten the presentation we did, and I guess what I'm saying is, like, we're really talking about closing the dog, whether or not to close the dog park, right? I mean, that's the, like, I feel like that wasn't, maybe we should just cut to the quick here and talk about the real issue at hand. And I mean, Carol gave a great presentation to many of us, to me one-on-one. I have 2 dogs at home. That's the only dog park I'll bring my dogs to, but not anymore. Not once I learned about this. I won't go there. We don't bring off-leash dogs to do their number 1 or 2 or jump on people at cemeteries and sacred places. So I think and even friends of mine, when I've been, I'm 100% like, yes, we have to close the off-leash dog park. That's where I'm at, and make no bounds about it. It's just that there wasn't even a question. But people are gonna be in their feelings in less than healthy ways about this, for sure. And I mean, I think, like, I'm looking for help on, like, what my message can be, what our message can be, and I mean, in the most sensitive way possible, like how I can convey that to people that might have an issue with it. So that's where I'm at. I'm, like, just trying to, I don't know how to message it. So messaging help, and how much you already gave us, some in terms of your great-granddaughter's umbilical cord.
Well, that's part of it, but and my apologies. I knew there was a reason I came tonight, but I was so busy trying to deal with getting here on the right time, and anyway, I forgot. And I didn't so much forget, but I did talk about working with Orville and the spiritual work we do, and how we've come a long ways in our ability to have that microphone for people to hear. But what happens is that we don't necessarily allow dogs at our ceremonies, and we particularly don't allow them because dogs are very close to their partners. And so you'll notice if you have a dog, it's like it keeps you from being sick. It stands in front of you. If you have cancer, it pays attention to you in a different way. And so all dogs are raised to be man's best friend. And so in our way, it's a spiritual thing. It's that if that dog goes in that place, and people have made prayers for their family, it takes away from, it goes to protect the person, they want to protect their partner, their person, and they're not recognizing that these are spiritual things that they take the energy from. So they in essence get that good energy, and that energy is supposed to go out to the person that made those prayers for. So in all our spiritual sites, we have ceremonies and prayers, and we often make sure that it's the dog that, we don't dislike dogs. We will bring them around, but in the particular site that is being designated as a site for prayer and meditation and contemplation, we want to ensure that we're giving them that gift. If someone sees a dog there, they're not going to make their prayer there as a native person. But I'm not going to tell you all that, except that I'm doing it on a mic right now. So the difficulty we have is, how do we, when people talk about the word sacred, and you look it up in the dictionary, it means holy, to be consecrated, or to be anointed. So all of those things are very biblical in their sense. But when I say sacred, when I think of sacred, I immediately think of Wakantaka. I think of the Great Spirit. I think of Wania, the Holy Spirit. So to me, there's 2 different things there. But to other people, they would say, oh, that's the same. And it's different because I was born to always respect all of life, not choose to protect life because there's a law, but to protect life because that's why I, as a human being, was born, was to produce children and to care for them. And so as much as I try to teach them about their prayer and about where they place their prayers and how they You know, we can be walking down the street and we can pray. That's not so much always the issue, because we can pray wherever we need to pray. But when we have a sacred site, that means we have spirits there. That means we've protected it so that we have a place for them to gather, that we can go to, and not so much like a church, but more like an energy field. Like we can step into that space and we can know that they'll hear us and take our prayers. You see what I mean? Different, a little bit. And my apologies. I totally spaced it till you said dog park, and I went, oh my God, I forgot to talk about the dog stuff. But it had nothing, I mean, we all love dogs, so don't get me wrong. And I'd have to tell you a real traditional story in order to get you to the place to understand why we don't allow dogs at our ceremonies. And the reason I would have to tell you that is that it's important to understand that relationship that dogs have to the stratosphere of sorts. They play a big role in how we look at, like they're tattletales. That's what I'll say. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then I guess the other thing that from my time with you, Carol, talking about this space is like, you know, that's helpful, and I think kind of ongoing about the importance to the sacred nature of the land and dogs and all that. That's really helpful. But also, if you know, I mean, there's no question in my mind that we need to close this to off-leash dogs. Period. That said, you know, I want to be able to deal with the people that are going to be upset about this. If we weren't, you know, if we were going to keep it a dog park, which I don't think we're going to, and I sure hope we're not going to, commissioners, it would be so, I mean, one, you'd have to do a bunch of fencing, and it wouldn't be what people consider what is currently there. So, I mean, getting to that, it would be so diminished from what people think about when they think about it there. So, getting to that to some extent would be helpful as well. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Frederick.
Thank you. Miigwech for coming and saying what I think a lot of us needed to hear about the connection that exists in Minneapolis. It was certainly enlightening to hear about those cultural connections and to understand, you know, why we are here, which thank you, Commissioner Engelhardt, for bringing that forward. I am also a proponent of the board deciding to move forward in a space that, to your point, brings together communities in a way that recognizes that this space is meant to be taken care of, and we are stewards of a community that we will only get back so much as what we put in. So thank you to our National Parks speakers today and our Historical Society members also for reminding us of our duty and responsibility to this land, because there exists many facets of it. And I think as good stewards of the land, learning from this immense history is something that can only continue to bring forth that healing aspect of the land and the spiritual and cultural connections. So I certainly look forward to working with planning staff and other commissioners to work towards a solution that includes community in all of those facets. So I don't have a lot of questions at this moment, but I'm sure that I will going forward. And I'm glad to know that there are so many really incredible minds working together to restore something that could potentially, well, I believe it will have very incredible impacts going forward in terms of restoration and healing. So thank you, everybody, for centering that and for bringing that forward to the board today. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Carbajal-Moran.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate Commissioner Frederick's remarks of just thank you so much for taking the time to come to the board and share knowledge today. There's a few community members on my end that are watching tonight, and so, and also to constituents. Minneapolis is in District 5, and so as a commissioner, I do want to express that my email's open, and so I want to continue hearing from like our community. I hope that to the folks that are watching that this is provides education, and I did wanted to bring something forward, just a conversation that I had. I'm also a dog mom, and so I also respect our, you know, like our dog parents. In the conversation that I was in, they shared that there are some of our dogs that start to dig, and so with Minneapolis, the land, it's a little bit more lower, and so when our dogs are what's it called? I'm sorry, but when they're digging out, you know, they're very, very close to just hitting very sacred land, and so if I wanted to call on our archaeology team, if maybe you can elaborate more on that, just, you know, just yeah, if you can come forward and elaborate. I don't know if my question made sense.
Absolutely, it does make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, so one of the things that we do watch for, so as part of our duties and roles, we monitor the different archaeological sites, the different features, to understand you know, what kind of impacts we're seeing. It ranges from a number. We look at a lot of different things. We look at, you know, any impacts from climate change, flooding, erosion, just general traffic. And so that is something that we do. We also actually use it as opportunities to teach the next generation as well. Actually, this week I have a school group who were of high schoolers who are actually learning about how you know, different processes work and how it can impact different types of cultural resources. And so some of the things that we do see and monitor is, yeah, foot traffic, but also from animals. And in dogs in particular, I'm also a dog owner, and my dog is very terrible in my backyard, in other places about digging. And one of the things that we commonly see is, you know, dogs, you know, kind of, like pawing at the dirt, digging holes. And that is problematic for a lot of archaeological sites. Archaeological sites and other different types of cultural properties, they do sit on the surface. Some of them are above the surface, and some of them are below the surface. And so with the places that we're talking about right now, it encompasses all of that. And, you know, we do see a lot of different types of cultural material on the surface. And so if we do have our canine friends kind of digging into the dirt, that's actually dislodging some of those artifacts. And the one thing that we're always kind of paying attention to is, you know, the importance of those different types of cultural materials relates to kind of, you know, how they occur in the earth and where they're occurring and the frequency of how they're occurring. And so when we see, you know, artifacts or cultural material dislodged, that actually loses all that information that we're able to pass on to future generations. And so that is some of our concerns that we see. And in some cases, we do get deeper pits that are dug. And you never know kind of whenever you might run into something that's maybe a hearth feature, like a fire pit feature from somebody 2,000 years ago. It might be near surface, and then you lose that information, or we lose that opportunity to kind of connect, you know, to the past. And so that's why we're very careful, and we do spend a lot of time monitoring these different types of sites, this one in particular, because we have noted a lot of not only just dogs and that activity, but also foot traffic too. We do see people going off trail and creating new pathways, and that is also something that we're a little bit, you know, concerned with, and we spend a lot of time monitoring those conditions. So I hope that makes sense and answers your question and clarifies that.
That does. Yeah, thank you so much. I know that, at least for tonight, my intention, I I really want to make sure that our community, our constituents have education and know more about Minneapolis. I know that the Star Tribune did release an article, and so I wish that education came from like our body, but again, our indigenous leaders and elders have also been saying this for many years, and so again, just wanting to ask questions that like our community can learn. So thank you.
President Olson.
Yeah, so, as we consider moving forward, as we consider narrative communication with folks, I just think just constant communication, constant education as we, start making more concrete decisions as we move forward, using every resource available to us. I mean, Jolene, a lot of this is probably falling on you and our comms team and doing informational, TikTok videos, YouTube, like just getting it out there and the story out there as much as possible, because like many of you, I've had several conversations with constituents and friends and families, because this is one of the things that has kind of percolated for folks. And every time it starts with, a bit of sorrow, a bit of mourning for what there is, and then it ends with understanding of the choice that we have to make and the changes we have to make. I mean, I have a dog, and we've gone there, and I've definitely gone off path, and I've definitely done some, things that I am like not super happy that we did, but in that moment, it was, beautiful for, me and Paige and Perry, and, you go to that place because your dog can be free, because you can experience, a bit of catharsis, a bit of, release and, connection with the land. And it really is a special place, just naturally, and walking through and getting that sort of, that time in that space. And so I think as we consider, what we do as we continue on the land, I think there are very much ways that we can still provide a really strong connection, and by lifting this up, I mean, as we say, as we've heard of the energy of this space, beyond that, we can still have folks, I think, give them a place where they can, connect with nature and have the peace that, perhaps not with their animal, but that can still be valuable for folks to experience. Also, as we move forward and conversations get larger, I think we should be thinking creatively of finding other, political partners and folks of note that we can reach out to. Governor Walz brings his dog there, but he's also, a friend and ally of, our tribal nations, right? Can we, get him to have some support? Can we get some, Mayor Fry, other folks, right? Just so that, as we come up with a decision, it's pretty much unanimous across the board of like, hey, we have to do this. As far as, I also think it'll be very hard to find any sort of alternative spot for our fur dogs, particularly along the river. I mean, maybe north around this area, but really anywhere on the river probably has archaeological significance. But so I wouldn't want to promise that, but I do think that we should try as a board and staff, as we kind of look forward, what are some alternatives we can provide for some folks. But strong communication, working with folks, tell the story, and I think we'll have a pretty strong, clear path forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Abeni.
Thank you, Chair Garcia. I'm not on this committee, and thanks for seeing my light. I also wanted to say thank you to everybody that came and presented, because it was really helpful, honestly, and it's helpful to hear from all the agencies and, of course, people that have the long perspective of the Dakota history in that space. I'm wondering if the agencies and the groups that are involved in looking at this, is there a joint powers agreement or anything like that? I think there was some mention of that, but then is there a sort of a goal or an ideal to sort of synchronize the approach to managing these different lands under the jurisdiction of the different entities? Depending if the park board were to change its land use in that case, does it dovetail with other work, or is it standalone?
There's not a joint powers agreement for this specific area. There's a joint powers agreement for the area further south. That agreement has lapsed, and the partners are looking to renew that agreement. But I think the second part of your question, will the agencies work together? I think one of the benefits of the Fort Snelling Area Joint Powers Agreement is that we have a long, long track record of working together to further some common goals, and those relationships will continue. We will continue to work together. The National Park Service has expertise in land management that we don't, and helps us with stuff on the historic Fort Snelling site and vice versa. So we will continue to work together to get to the finish line.
I think that would be important. Oh, and yes, Ms. Hailstrom, because I do think that the land boundaries aren't representative of the actually cultural boundary or the place. Yeah.
Chair Garcia and Commissioner Bene, I also wanted to note that, you know, here in the next months, Minnehaha Regional Park itself will initiate a process to update the long-range vision plan. And so any change to the land use of any area of the park, you know, would certainly be further identified through that process. There's much investigative and analysis work and many stakeholders to bring to the table. But any changes to the designation or classification or use of the land, you know, could be further explored during that process.
If I may, we do work currently with the VA and with the Historical Society to manage, kind of do the land management, because again, we have the expertise. We are working to clear invasive plant material. We've been working with the Park Board through this for a couple of years now, I guess, so we're more than open to always partnering.
All right, Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. Frankly, I find this all very exciting, and to me, it's about raising awareness, and that we're not the only ones who are facing this particular issue. I know Mounds Park in St. Paul has been, I don't know how many years that's been an issue, but how we can learn from those other areas and what can be applied here, I think, is very, very important. But to me, the exciting part is the fact of just raising awareness. You know, there are so many cultural aspects of the entire world that are different than, shall we say, the mainstay of things. I mean, one of the things I always think about is that many cultures, you should never shake hands with your left hand, you know, with somebody. It's just, it's everywhere. We don't all have exactly the same culture. And how we can educate people without, how should I say, a righteousness of this is right and this is wrong, I think is really, really an opportunity. And I get very excited about it, but how we can be looking at other areas of the world and how we do it. I mean, I had a very good conversation with Vice President Desponde, and basically in culture he was raised in and everything, you don't bury, you don't, it's a totally different, shall we say, mindset. And I just really hope that all of us can take it in a positive way instead of this is a no-no type of shaming, I guess is probably the best way to say it. And anyway, thank you all for the presentations and particularly your heartfelt comments. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Frederick.
Yes, I'll be quick. It's kind of along the lines of this. Our last slide on the presentation, when we went all the way down, was those little signs that were put up that I noted. Once September 2026 rolls around, it looks to be, if we stay on track, that that QR code will be scanned 3 times a day, which is pretty good for the fact that, you know, the use in that park, there are lots of people who go to that park, who visit this site with a group of people. So that information is being disseminated out at least 3-ish times a day to, you know, X amount of people. I digress anyways. I just wanted to put a flag on that for our communications team, and thinking about ways that we can continue to collaborate, seeing as these welcome signs do invite folks to be directed to a site with more information, that folks are seeking that out. They want to learn. They want to see what it's about. So with the success of these signs, I just wanted to flag that I think that would be really useful in disseminating information as we continue throughout this process. And to Commissioner Vinnie's point, perhaps that can come through with some collaborative efforts, seeing as that there's already direction towards sites that have more information than maybe the park board holds. So thank you so much again.
Commissioner Engelhardt.
Yeah, just, I mean, talking about what, you know, what's going to happen with that particular space and land, I mean, I think it's going to be heated, unfortunately, and I'm just kind of running it past a few people that I trust, that I'm in a relationship with, that I know that are dog people. They get it, but they're like, geez, and it comes up, so what's going to happen with it, and that sort of thing. How are you going to keep people out with their dogs? And so, you know, that's an unanswered question, of course. And then, you know, what are you going to do to replace it? And so, you know, President Olson, you talked about that. I mean, you know, we have an issue with pristine waterways and recommendations in anything along the river, and the likelihood of that being, you know, sacred land as well. So there's a lot of, I think the main thing about this particular space, at least for the people that want to go there with their dogs, right, is that it's, you know, one, people are using a lot of land that isn't, you know, park board land and isn't, you know, it's from the various partners that we've heard from tonight. So they think it's bigger than it is, but it is, so therefore with all that, it is big. So like a bigger spread out wooded place where you can kind of get away from somebody who thinks their dog playing rough is cool and you might not, or whatever. So, you know, how can we replace that? I don't think, I mean, the airport dog park already exists, so that comes up, but it's like, that's not really a replacement because it's something that already exists. So there's a lot to consider as we do that, but I think, you know, if we can look to something that is spread out, that maybe has some trees where you can move around and get away from somebody and their dog that you maybe don't want to be hanging out with. There's a lot to consider, and just anticipating that people are going to have a lot of big emotions about this, that's for sure. So, thanks.
And Commissioner Carbajal-Moran.
Last comment. Again, I think that President Olson said it well of communication, education is so important. I'm wondering, can we take, I mean, this is public record, but can we take information from this presentation and then create it into, I don't know, visuals, like for social media? Would that be appropriate?
Chair Garcia and Commissioner Carvajal-Moran, you know, really the main intent of this study item tonight is to provide, you know, the Board of Commissioners with this knowledge, and also the public who may be viewing the meeting this evening. We're certainly able to take snips of the meeting and post this publicly on the webpage as well as the presentation. And I do want to not forget to mention that the long-range vision plan update for Minnehaha Regional Park, there is a website for that project that is live now for folks too. So if folks want to subscribe and receive updates or be involved in that process, that would be a great way. And so this is intended as an educational, you know, study item, and would be information that we can share publicly. All the information that the agencies have shared with you this evening are publicly available already on their web pages, and so this is helping to serve amplify that message. And we're grateful that you know, Juanita was able to be here and really speak to, you know, the cultural significance in a much deeper way than agency staff may be able to. So, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, Commissioner Carbajal-Moran, but I'm going to make one more comment. Again, I just want to say thank you to everybody who came to speak tonight. It's a very important issue, and it's something that deserves a lot more attention and a lot more discussion than it has had in a lot of our society over the past several years. I consider myself very fortunate to have had some background in this issue and these sorts of discussions that have happened in Indigenous communities for several years now. And I'm very glad to see that things are being brought to public attention, that we can share this information with all of our communities, and we can work together to move forward in reciprocity with one another as well as with the land and with our plant and animal relatives. So I look forward to having these continued discussions as we look at what this means for the future of the Minneapolis area, of our parklands as a whole. And I, again, would just like to say Toksha Shte and Gigawabaman. And at 7:22, I will adjourn this meeting of the Planning Committee.
At 7:22, I'd like to convene the Administration and Finance Committee. Secretary Ringel, will you please call our roll?
Vice President Deshpande.
Here.
Commissioner Engelhardt.
Here.
Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Co-Chair Carbajal-Moran.
Here.
Co-Chair Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. I'll take a motion to approval of our minutes, 2 sets of them.
I also move the minutes from April 29th and May 6th, 2026.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to our first resolution. Somebody like to read that for us, please?
I'll move Resolution 2026-93, a resolution approving a joint powers agreement between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the City of Minneapolis for the Lake Harriet Parkway and William Berry Parkway intersection improvements project within the Chain of Lakes Regional Park.
Thank you. Any questions regarding this action? Any questions? Not seeing any lights? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to our final resolution.
I'll move Resolution 2026-96, a resolution approving Memorandum of Understanding Amendment Number 1 between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the Minneapolis Sailing Center related to fundraising and preliminary design for the Bide-Makaska Boat Launch and Sailing Center within the Chain of Lakes Regional Park.
Thank you. People would like a presentation or have discussion, specific questions regarding this? I'm not seeing any lights. I will raise it myself. I'm very grateful for the Sailing Center for coming forward to do the fundraising for this and the preliminary design. I just want people to be aware, my understanding is that if there is a movement forward to move the, to expand the sailing school in the present area, that the present plan will need to be reopened and revisited. So I just want everybody to make sure that they're aware of that. And so this preliminary design to me is very essential, and I know very well that our staff will do a great job as far as engaging the community. But I do have concerns about it in this location. The key, probably the overriding theme of that Citizen Advisory Committee was about the decongestion of that corner. And by keeping the sailing school in that present spot does not decongestionize. I'm not sure if that's a word. Anyway, so that's a real concern to me. But appreciate the opportunity to look into it. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay. On that, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carry. And here now it's 7:26. I adjourn the Admin and Finance Committee.
Okay, I call to order the May 20 meeting of the Employee Relations Committee. Secretary Engold, can you call the roll?
Vice President Deshpande.
Here.
Commissioner Frederick.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Vice Chair Rucker.
Here.
Chair Engelhardt.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. How about the minutes from our last meeting?
We have to vote on approving the agenda.
Oh, okay. All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Do a motion to approve the minutes of our last April 29 meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the Employee Relations Committee, April 29th, 2026.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to our study item. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Mae Brooks. I'm the Director of Human Resources. I should say that tonight you are actually getting, where this presentation is concerned, junior varsity. Varsity actually created it, which would be Annie McBurney. She did a fabulous job. At the April 15 meeting, you asked for a resolution bringing forth staffing models regarding labor relations, and Annie was very diligent in meeting your request. And she could not be here tonight, so you are stuck with me. So remember, easy questions for me. Thank you. All right, so moving forward, what we did was we gave you some background. It is easy to see what we do now. What you may not realize is that the department really just got started in 2007. And so with that, you will see, and I'm not going to read the whole slide, but you can see in 2007 there was 1.75 full-time equivalent employees for all of the park board. And in fact, we did not even own our own personnel files. And they were reminiscing that in 2009, a semi-truck pulled up out front and brought us the personnel files from the city. And then we had to merge the 1.75 FTE, had to merge that semi-truck with the files we kind of had here, but then there were also files out in the field. So that's where we started. And so we moved forward with capacity building. And one of the things that I always like to say is in that 2010 to 2016, you can see we reached 7.6 full-time equivalent people in HR. That's when we did things like we brought on online hiring platforms, we did learning systems, we actually created trainings at that point because we had more bodies to do that. Again, capacity building. If you look between 2017 and 2019, you can see we expanded to like we expanded and we did the employee survey and the salary study. And that's the first time we did something that technical in-house. And remember, we had just started in 2007, and then we had that wonderful thing called COVID happen in 2020. Now, that was a complete operational disruption. We found out there were a lot of things that we had to respond to, and we had to do business differently, which is how we had to turn to virtual programming and virtual training. and we took on the racial equity work. So again, more hiring, different learning platforms, moving into that 2022. For 23 to 26, we are far more strategic in that we do lots more things, and we've expanded to that 9.65 FTEs. This year in particular, with the Minnesota Paid Family and Medical Leave implementation, it has been a steep learning curve, and we are going to be looking forward to this presentation because we are looking at trying to be and studying other structures regarding labor relations and how that work is done. So what Annie did was she did research and she figured out, you know, how to segment a way of looking at the way the work is done other places. So the first thing she looked at was for outside agencies and for ours. One way of doing it is that you enmesh the labor relations work into human resources. So that's our current structure. What that means is labor relations is part of everyone's basic job duties, right? There is no particular person, and everybody has to have a special area, be it a special union or they are responsible for note-taking. But that's the way it works for us. It's the way it works for Three Rivers. It's the way it works for Cleveland. You could have a work unit within HR, which is how it works at the city of Minneapolis. So the city of Minneapolis, they have their own labor relations unit. That person, they have people who handle the negotiations, the note-taking. They are responsible for reporting up to the CHRO. As an organization grows, it is generally more distinct. The labor relations unit gets to be bigger, more distinct, more discrete in the way that each of those areas function. And then finally, you can have a contractor model, which is what they have at Tacoma, all right, where you may have someone internal, which all they do is they organize and they work with an outside agency. So, keeping those things in mind, Annie found out that they're basically, she's proposing, you can look at it two different ways for a staffing model. A more streamlined approach and a more robust approach. As you can see, the streamlined approach means we would create approximately 1.5 FTEs, all right? So you have that first person who is full-time, they report to the Director of Human Resources, they support negotiations and strategy, they handle all of that. They liaise, yeah, that's right, with legal and investigations and all of that. But we look at having a 0.5 that reports to the office manager out of the deputy's office, all right? And what that person would do is they would support data requests as it relates to human resources and labor relations. The more robust approach would be to have 3 FTEs. And you can see that it is broken down into 3 separate positions with 3 very distinct areas of a responsibility. So there is somebody who oversees, there's somebody who would take care of more of the note-taking, the consultative issues, and then we have one person just for data requests and to coordinate the investigation process. All those things are, all this is being done now. It's just being done differently. As you look at a more robust approach, you can definitely have more detail put into it, and you would have someone that is their concentration. So that's what you're looking at. And then the next slide is about how much would it cost, okay? Now, we are looking at salary, fringe benefits, additional costs, and you can see the total. So salary, remember, is basically market data. So, and that's just a snapshot in time, all right? You never know if it's gonna go, how much it's gonna go up, but for market data in particular, remember, we're not talking about a specific position right now. We're trying to keep this as general as possible. When you start figuring out what it is exactly they do, you can probably hone that salary. But for right now, that's why it's a range. Does that make sense? Okay. Fringe benefits. You're looking at standard operating costs and the cost of benefits. And so that's what the fringe benefits there. We've checked these numbers with finance, so we have a pretty good idea about the reality of those figures. And then additional costs, that's things like technology, your computers, your phone, it's setting up your email, whatever else. It could be office supplies, it could be training and development, it could be certifications or conferences or whatever else. So again, we tried to kind of get a ballpark figure for all that, and that's how Annie came up with that total for the 1.5 and for the 3 people. All right, if we are looking at doing this, one of the things that we say is leveraging a dedicated labor resource would be phenomenal. It's great because you have someone who things are less likely to fall through the cracks. They have a direct line into someone. Now, one of the things that we talk about on this slide is right-sizing this workload. Currently, the Society for Human Resource Management says you need about 1 HR person for, I believe it's every 100 employees or so. So our balance currently is we have about 1 person during the peak season to every 225 employees. And if you're talking about the generalist, it's 1 generalist to every 600. Okay? So that's just general work. The second bullet speaks to Workday implementation. That is, as we told you, we're going to be tearing out and tearing down the Comet system. We're going to be completely reinventing ourselves with the help of the city of Minneapolis. What that also means is this. For the generalists in particular, well, within the next 18 months, they will be spending 25 to 75% of their time at the city implementing that system. Okay? That being said, we will, once that system is implemented, and HR and finance will be going first, we will be getting all the hiring. Currently, the rec centers will do the provisional hiring. We don't do that in human resources, okay? But once Workday is implemented, it will all come through human resources. So what you're looking at basically is, I would say, and I don't think I'm being unrealistic, we're talking another 100% increase in some of these applications, okay? Now, one of the presentations I gave you said that this year we have done 3 executive hirings, 3 director level hirings, because normally we go to the outside for that. Those hirings take us 300% more time than a basic type of hire. What we're hoping is once we have more capacity, we can figure out if we can do it, how we can do it, and have it done as well as we would like it to be done. I always tell folks you pay for these things on one end or the other. If we go to the outside and we have an executive search firm do it, it's about 25 to 30% of said salary. We're spending the same amount of money, it's just we're not spending it in a check. So again, folks, a lot of this is about if we were to hire or have a labor relations person or department, it would change the way that we do business. It would make things more efficient. It would improve relationships internally with our employees because we could spend more time doing some other things. It would also probably help our relations with some of our labor partners because, again, we want to make sure that we are giving everybody the adequate amount of time. which is not to say that we don't do a good job, but it's not to say that we can't do a better job. So with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Frederick.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And I just have a simple question that goes back to the kind of the beginning of your presentation with the end of the slideshow, with the bullet points for each year.
Oh, sure.
And I just am curious if you can speak to this, and I promise I'm not trying to make it a hard question. So if you don't know, that's okay. But it perked my ears up because it says in 2020, we established DHS background screening. Do you know what the scope of that is?
Well, DHS background screening is a little bit different than what we normally do. So we've always had to do background checks.
For sure.
Because of the nature of the business. In this particular case, this is an enhanced background screening. And that has to do with certain portions of our population where we receive grants from the state of Minnesota, and they have a more detailed background screening that the people have to go through. And so when that occurred, it was a matter of they are checking for things that we don't necessarily check for. And those background checks are actually done on a different schedule for a very much smaller portion of the population.
Can you speak to what those background, like,
what would
why
they be
the
looking for?
depth? Yeah, what are they looking for?
Well, if I remember correctly, and I'm sure somebody around here will correct me if I'm wrong, it has to do with our child care area. And so because of the fact we are accepting those funds, they also have more stipulations. So they're checking for, let's say, if I remember, one of them is if there's been any type of selling of drugs, if there's been any type of fraudulent activity against children, if there's been any type of abuse toward children, if there's been any type of familial type of problem. Let's say that they have written bad checks or they've taken funds. Now, this is what I tell everyone. With any background check or with any background check agency, while they clearly delineate what they are going to be looking for, there is also an appeal process. So, and that was a concern when we got the DHS background check process and the stipulations, was how would it affect current employees, and if that would in fact in any way systematically eliminate certain pools. What we have found thus far is that is not the case. Does that help? Did I answer? Did I give you too much information?
No, that's great information.
Okay.
I just wanted to ensure that, given the shift in nature of the federal government, that we are not being beholden to any sort of regulations for our staff members that might be inequitable. And, we've seen in Minneapolis the power of DHS to sort of smote people that we hold near and dear to our hearts and our system. So I just wanted to ensure that those background checks serve the purpose that are intended, that doesn't go further beyond the scope of work that this staff member could do. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Frederick. Just for clarity, in this case, the acronym DHS applies to the Minnesota State Agency, Human Services.
I didn't even have to do any of that.
Well, no, it's good to get clarity on it because, anyway, I could go on a rant about acronyms and agencies. But yeah, those are Department of Human Services background checks. It's unfortunate that we have two governmental agencies with the same acronym, one of them quite terrible and one of them that does good work. Yes, Commissioner Deshpande, or Vice President Deshpande.
Thank you, Chair Engelhardt. So directionally, we can go with 1.5 or 3. And is there FTEs for this type of staffing model. So is there was there a recommendation? Like, is staff leaning towards one side or another?
I'm always leaning toward 3, always. Let's be very clear about that. What I would also say is this, realistically speaking, what we have to figure out is what we can afford and where it would go, right? So when we look at the numbers, we try and figure out what we could create from that, right? So what I'm looking at now is, if we're talking efficiency and effectiveness, and we look at the 1.5, and we're looking at workloads, one of the things that we know, immediacy, we've got to figure out something with data requests. There's just no way around it, all right? And so I'd love to have 3. Absolutely. I've wanted it for 9 years. It's not necessarily something we can always afford. What I also will tell you is this. The creation of labor relations would be a wonderful thing, but it also will not eliminate, let's say, the need for outside investigators, because we're still going to need that function also. So that's why I'm balancing my answer. I'm trying to be as realistic as possible with you. But those are just the models. We could create something in between those two things, Commissioner. It's just a matter of streamlined, ideal. Okay?
Sure, thank you. And I was glad too that you put in the option for a contractor model, just for us to have a full scope of what's on the table. And were there any costs associated with a contractor?
Which she did not research the cost of a contractor because we were thinking of it more from an employment lens. But sure, we could research that, or we could ask Annie to research that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
President Olson?
Great, thanks for letting me speak, though I'm not on the committee. So I'm wondering if, so one with the streamline, so let's say we find that we have the funds, but just for the 1.5, in future years, would you be able then to, if we get more funds, find it's effective, find we want to boost it, that can kind of build into the 3 pretty easily, and we can ramp up as needed?
Correct, sir.
Okay. I'm also wondering, I mean, not every position has to, save funds or return funds, but for some reason, when I conceive of what these positions would do or improve for us, it does seem to me that maybe there's some times that, when things fall through the cracks where maybe it could cost funds. So do you think, are there ways that this would possibly save us funds or save us some heartache, or not really? It's just more about being able to do things efficiently. I'm curious if there's an aspect of that to this.
All right, so this is my philosophy, sir. My philosophy is you pay on one end or the other, and it's always better to pay on the front end, okay? So what happens is, when you have someone who's dedicated to this position, what you have is a savings in, you're not missing deadlines. You're having someone who can respond. You're having someone who can give a consistent message across all 9 or 10 unions that we have. All those things come with a cost. They're not necessarily a hard cost initially, but they end up costing us when we sit down to negotiate. It ends up costing us when we're trying to create a relationship. So, is it a cost? Absolutely. Could I come up with a hard dollar cost at this precise moment? No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so absolutely there's a cost of operational efficiency. How we exactly quantify that or see that, that's up in the air potentially, but they are there. Okay, I hear that. Thank you.
I mean, I'd like to encourage any commissioners or, anybody up here at the DI to, share their thoughts, or, this is because of open time, this is our opportunity to talk about it, and it's, it's a big move, and there's a lot I could say, but I'm just, encouraging other folks to ask questions or share your thoughts right now. And if not, I have plenty of things to address. Commissioner Abene.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Engelhardt. I'm not on the committee, but I'll offer that, I think that this is something that would be supported if there's a way to find the funding for it. Building the expertise inside the organization or staffing it in a different way, I think is really important. The challenge might be funding it, or especially if it's an ad. So I guess what I'll say, after having been on the BET for a couple of years, when it looks like an additional position that's being requested, that gets scrutinized pretty heavily. And I see the superintendent nodding. And so we've had difficulty adding positions over the term that I served on this last time as well. Just putting that out there. Even if it's a good idea, it gets scrutinized sometimes. So that might take some legwork on our end if we feel that it's important. The other thing is, I would just also say that the city sometimes has an interest in scrutinizing the duplication of staffing at the park board in a way that I actually am offended by, but it's real. So I'm just putting, those are some maybe some warning signs a little bit for how we choose to pursue this. But that said, I like that the model's at least 1.5. I think that people go on vacation. It probably will not completely take this off of everybody else's plates. They'll still have to have sort of the generalist approach, but it's building a little bit more robust staffing, at least as a 1.5. If we can get that, the 3 would be great. But yeah, I support it. Thanks.
Well, again, I guess I see no other lights, but, superintendent, deputy superintendent, Secretary Ringgold, if you feel like sharing your thoughts too, but mine are, I thank you, and too, it's a good overall presentation, and I think it's true. It's kind of hard to quantify the back end, like you pay for it on the front end or you pay for it on the back end. It is kind of hard to quantify that stuff, but what it can look like is employment litigation, ADA, EEOC, and that also thoroughly toxifies a workplace, or it can look like a 22-day long strike also. This board has 4 priorities, and we named that. We're not naming labor as one of them because we've already done a lot. One of them is this very committee we're meeting in, the Committee of Employee Relations. Moving this direction is, in my strong opinion, paramount to a best practices model. The freeing up, the fact that we have, division directors and superintendent's level staff, including the superintendent, kind of handling what they don't have someone as a go-to for strategy and bargaining and that sort of thing. It fundamentally is a structural problem that we need to fix, and we have the opportunity to fix. In terms of outside investigation, I would hope that this model would see a lot more in-house investigation. This is someone that could do the these people, 1.5 or 3 FTE could do some level of investigation, could coach and counsel on lower level, depending on the nature of the investigation. So we'd see some shifting costs that way. I understand not eliminating. There's sometimes you want to have an outside investigator that, it's they're totally responsible for what's going on. And then, of course, interfacing with us, like this very committee and how we've moved as a board is being engaged on all things labor relations and interfacing with us. So it would really free up, senior top-level staff, superintendent's level staff, and division directors to do what they were hired to do instead of digging in on day-to-day labor relations, and to be coached and counseled by this labor relations department on best practices and the day-to-day. So this is, to me, paramount to moving toward employer of choice or maintaining, if for many people, if it already is their employer of choice. One thing I wanted to raise is because we get such limited opportunity due to open meeting laws, and that is the reporting structure. Secretary and Deputy Superintendent Ringgold and I meet regularly. We talked about this. Reporting, to you, May, and Director Brooks is great, but also I think having like another line to indicate just the power that the labor relations director themselves would hold in terms of the strategy on bargaining and that sort of thing. So if we could have like a bubbled line or something like that directly to the superintendent would be key, and I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that now.
I can speak to that.
Okay,
actually.
great.
So for that type of position, all right, it's much like a director in that the position in all likelihood would be appointed, sir, which means that the contract, I always say I serve at the pleasure of the deputy superintendent, but he owns my contract, okay? This is be the same thing for this person. That person would serve and get work direction from me, but they serve at the pleasure of the superintendent. The superintendent owns that contract. The superintendent ultimately gives work direction, especially around something that has an overarching organizational pool. So that's why it reports up through human resources, but again, it's owned by the superintendent, sir. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, Director Brooks, and any other, okay, with that, motion to adjourn, or adjourned? Okay, Committee of Employee Relations is adjourned.
Noting the time is 7:56, I will call the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee to order. Secretary Ringgold, will you please call the roll?
Vice President Deshpande.
Here.
Commissioner Forney.
Here.
Commissioner Frederick.
Here.
Vice Chair Garcia.
Here.
Chair Benny.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. That motion carries. Next, we have two sets of minutes. Would somebody move the minutes for approval?
I will move Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee minutes of December 3rd, 2025, and Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee minutes of June 18th, 2025.
Seconded.
We don't need a second on the committee. I usually forget that myself. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving both sets of minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. And with that, we have one item on the agenda. It's a discussion item. And for that, I need to call the dream team forward. Pamela Gokemeyer, Brian Rice. That's right. Frankie Johnson. Let's go. And I'd call Tom Workman forward, but he's not here. He couldn't be here, but he's darn excited. So take it away.
Thank you, Chair Benny and Commissioners, and my illustrious team behind me. So this year was a supplemental budget year, which inherently means that there's no must-pass bills. It's not a budget year. Yes, it's what they coin a bonding year, but we know that doesn't have to pass. And I will say, despite all of that and the very weird this is the, I think, 14th session I've worked, or 12th session I've worked. It was the strangest one yet for me, and it really sputtered along. There weren't a lot of conference committees. I think all of us, the hopes were pretty low in terms of what would be delivered, and I think this was one of the most successful sessions I've ever worked, having said all that. So the deal struck by leadership included a $1.2 billion bonding bill, a lifeline, much needed lifeline for HCMC, reduction in vehicle tab fees for 1 year, and that was coordination with the Republicans, especially in the Senate, to get the 7 votes we needed for the bonding bill. Property tax relief, federal tax conformity, one-time increase in homestead credit refunds to 14.88%, creation of a new statewide Office of Inspector General, funding to modernize county IT systems for Medicaid services, and money for schools to implement systems for students to report anonymous threats. There was no agreement on relief for businesses that lost revenue due to Operation Metro Surge, nor any measure on gun restrictions. We did hear some hearings on that, but unfortunately that did not progress. The GO bonding capital investment bill it was a $1.2 billion bill with $7 billion in requests to the committees. We got $6 million for North Commons Park. I mean, that alone, if we had gotten just that, would have been a successful session. We got $1.8 million for the burger fountain in Loring Park, $1.5 million for the new Cedar Riverside Recreation Center. And this is huge and very unexpected, a whopping $10 million for the Metro Regional Parks. And we saw the governor had only included $1 million to be split between the 10 implementing agencies, which was really disappointing. But I mean, I think our Metro Parks delegation that meets every Monday at the Capitol, really, we were asking for 20 million, and we thought, if we got 3 to 5, that would have been, more promising. But this was spectacular, and with the Met Council match, I mean, it lifts it up to 16.67 million, and based on the population surveys that go out this summer, Met Council they'll be able to determine the formula based on that. But Director Arvidsson said usually when it's 10 million, we get approximately 3.7 million of that pot. So that was very exciting, is very exciting. And then they also did another 5 million for the Met Council community tree planting grants for the regional parks. And this is exciting news I found out today. We had hoped to move the, so for Cedar Riverside, we previously got, in 23, we got 3.5 million in GO bonds. And in 2024, we got 5 million in cash that was going to be administered through deed. And we were hoping to get it moved to be housed with the Met Council grant for ease of administration, and that's usually who we work with on these things. And we did not think, it was in the governor's supplemental budget, and we went to Frankie and I went to the Environment Committee in the House, and Met Council spoke in support of it. It was a budget neutral motion. Or provision, and we've been looking in the environment bill in the Senate that had the vehicle. It wasn't in there, so kind of bummed that it didn't make it. And then Met Council contacted me today and said it showed up, and it showed up in the cash general fund bill. Wow. So it's great because it just makes taking care of those funds and administering those funds so much more appropriate and more easier streamlined on our side. We did also want to get an extension on both of those allotments for Cedar Riverside to give us more time. And Brian and I and Dan Elias met with Representative Noor about this project, and he was working to get that extension in this year. Unfortunately, it didn't get in the bill this year, but we will work next year, and he wants to do that as well, to get a little more time on that. They did include a capital maintenance plan provision in the bonding bill. Initially, this looked like a capital replacement account, which was concerning to a lot of people, including the park board, because that could look like your entire CIP. And if you had to have the funds to replace every asset that you got state funding for in whole. They changed that. They got a lot of feedback from it. And it's now what they described essentially a checkbox, letting MMB know that you do have a maintenance plan for repair and preservation of your assets, and we do that. So that should not be a problem. The LCCMR bill this year, while we didn't have any grant requests through LCCMR this year, they did do work on the community grant program that was launched they approved it last year, and it's a large pot of money, $28.18 million, and initially was going to be for smaller nonprofit projects only, but they expanded it last year to eligibility for trail maintenance and AIS management. And this year they increased the max grant total for the trail maintenance to $2 million. It was $750,000 before. So this is, I mean, they heard a lot. Representative Heinzman really pushed on looking at the actual cost of doing trail maintenance, and that $750,000 wasn't going to get anyone very far. So this is exciting that that was increased. They also added a surety bond requirement for grants. Initially, it would have applied to everyone, and it was amended to say it's only if you're seeking advance payment for the grant, which they're not encouraging, but if you're doing reimbursement, then there would not be that requirement, because we'd hate to use part of the grant proceed to pay for a surety bond when we have audited financial statements and internal controls. The RFP for this is expected the second half of this year, and we're going to work to identify a project that we have ready to tee up when it comes out. And as you know, you recently approved 5 LCCMR projects for consideration in this next cycle. Some unfinished business, and maybe Brian, you want to speak to the outdoor recreation enhancement account, but this is an exciting new possibility that I know Brian has corresponded with you about. I don't know, do you want me to speak to it, or you?
You can go through and then I'll follow.
Okay. So Senator Dibble worked with Senator Herr. He was carrying the bill, and it's something that the DNR did a report on. It's something that other states have established. So it's an outdoor recreation enhancement account. And when you go to renew your vehicle tabs, there would be a voluntary option for you to donate money to this account. And initially it was thought to apply just to state parks, and also to your state park pass would be, you could get it through that process too. But Senator Dibble really feels that, and we agree, that you know, we could also include the metro regional parks in that formula if that comes to fruition, and it would help us with the 40% that the state is supposed to be paying for operation and maintenance, and we know we usually only see 8 to 9% of that cost, and it's great because it wouldn't be state money; it would be voluntary money that comes from the community. So yeah. We're hopeful that we can, work on that next year. The liquor bill. So the legislation was introduced by Senator Clark and Representative Jordan to implement our Parks on Tap concept. Unfortunately, the legislature picked up the 2025 liquor bill and passed it in both chambers and sent it to Governor Walz. You probably heard about the nursing home happy hour was in that bill. But unfortunately, it didn't include the 2026 request, so we'll have to revisit that one. And then the repeal of the state prohibition on local control of firearms. I mentioned they did hear, this concept. The mayor of St. Paul and our mayor testified supporting this. Lots of other people came out, on both sides, but unfortunately, we didn't get any traction on this year. This is something that came up at least 2 sessions ago, and again this time in the housing zoning bill, and it had an potential impact on park dedication fees. And Brian worked really hard when it first came out to change that to be amenable to us, and it appeared in that way again this year, but the bill didn't move out of committee. But we do think it would likely come up again. I'm going to let you speak to this one.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you, Pamela. Really, this was a great session, honestly. It's probably, there's some ways of quantifying, looking at it, but just generally, I don't need to tell this board, or maybe I do, the newer members, but Commissioner Rucker, Commissioner Benny, Commissioner Forney, Commissioner Olson, 4 prior members of superintendent, how important it was to get North Commons done. I mean, really to get $6 million to really cover that it's been a 6-year period since 2020 when we got the first appropriation. Mr. Tate isn't here, but that's been a long journey. It's going to be the single biggest building project the Park Board's ever had. I've worked with you folks for 45 years now. It's huge. It's looking great. I know there's a groundbreaking, or not a groundbreaking, but a tour tomorrow with our legislators. It took a lot of time and effort, and clearly Superintendent articulated that was our number one and clear priority. And so everything else that follows is great news, but we really did have tremendous support from Representative Fooley and Esther Bajay and Senator Champion, but also the entire rest of the delegation. I think they understood the importance of this to the community here. And just getting that, there's more work to be done, but getting that off the legislative agenda opens up a lot of vistas and potential projects in other parts of the city and everywhere else. So it's a big relief to have that done. I talked to Commissioner Brucker. I know there's more fundraising to do. I'll certainly participate in that from the foundation. They've been a great partner, but that's a real milestone. And as we move forward, and then on these other matters too, you know, Representative Lee talked to me early in the month, back probably the first week in May, and he mentioned that other members of the delegation had other priorities, including the Berger Foundation. We were well aware that Representative Knorr still is very committed to Cedar, and I said, you know, the Park Board would certainly work with those groups, but I want to make it clear to him that absent the $6 million, and I talked to Commissioner Benny about this, if we'd said, sure, we'll take those on, but if it's like Minneapolis Parks gets $6 million and you split it 3 ways, that just wouldn't have worked. I mean, we just would, there'd be a failure there to get North Commons, the commitment there, especially when the private sector had raised over $20 million and we'd gotten the other support. So it's really gratifying that all of these things could happen. And as Pamela said, the $10 million, I talked to President Olson, he'd called me Sunday and had a preview, and he asked me, what did I think we could get? And I would have said, what, Tom? I think I said $6 million would have been, and when he almost drove off the road when he told me it was 10. And I think that is a testament, again, to Representative Lee. For those who've been around for a while, for years and years, Sandy Pappas has done the Pappas-Pratt Pizza Party in the Senate. She was the co-chair of the committee. I think Sandy's fingerprints are on that, but also Representative Lee at the final hearing, Leon Lilly came. He's also been supporting that. We've really built up a very good coalition of other Metro Park participants in that. And curiously, they're really the only other big Metro Park kind of one. Our projects for North Commons, for Cedar Riverside, for the Berger Fountain were really local parks. Three Rivers got some money for the Coon Rapids Dam, which is really more of a natural resource feature, and St. Paul got a big number for $9.3 million for the Como Zoo, but that's kind of the Como Zoo. Most of these other projects that were done, the legislators really concentrated the Metro Park money on this request, and that's just great, because that's really a foundational piece of our system. And so all of those worked together. And to get to this point, I pass this around, this is our final, and really Frankie's report. She's the one who really keeps track of all this stuff and monitors and the full details. And what's important about this report is not only the issues we covered, all the time that went in, the weekly reports, but the actual language that's attached in the back, because we always refer back to these annual reports. When there's a question that comes up like what happened, we can talk about what was said, but a lobbyist told me years ago, follow the paper. Well, the paper is the exhibits. This is what actually passed into law, and it's important on all these projects and what's said, and we go back and reference what it was used for. You know, lastly, probably the last page, if you're looking at this as an evaluation, would be, I started this, you know, probably years ago and thought it was a one-time thing, but we've actually kept track of the funding sources. And this, if you did it just on a numerical calculation, this would probably be the second best session we've ever had. The total appropriations in this bill carried over is $19,523,000 to the park board through the bonding program, LCCMR, the operation maintenance program, and the legacy program. And it's when in the context of whatever the budget is, $160 million, this is really a pretty significant number, and that does not include our LGA allocations, which is, I don't know that's kind of a separate deal. But what am I saying? This partnership with the state legislature is huge. I think all the newer legislators have got really good relationship, and the older ones with their legislators. And we talk about lobbyists. I'm glad years ago, we talked about this HR function years ago. The board created a position for intergovernmental relations. I think Pamela's doing just a superb job at that, just not only with the legislature, but all the other relationships that this board has with the counties, the school board, the city, all the other agencies. It's really left to our own. The park board can only go so far, but the dynamism of this board, or the secret ingredient, is you own the land, people need land, and we have the ideas, and we have the planners like Mr. Schroeder and Mr. Arvidsson who come up with these great ideas, and we got a great product to sell, and there's a lot of people who are willing to invest in this product. And I think our best lobbyists historically have really been the commissioners, having those relationships with the legislators, knowing them, knowing what they're interested in. I know Commissioner Engelhardt works with Senator Clark and Representative Jordan, also Representative Knorr. I mean, Knorr has secured $10 million for a project on land we do not own. You do not own. And that's one of the things I want to talk about tonight. That's unprecedented. There's no other agency in the state where we get $10 million for a project that we don't have the property for. And that's good news. It's also the bad news. In 8 months, we're going to get written up by MMB for not doing anything with that money. And we're not going to look good. So in the next 8 months, Superintendent, Mr. President, you got to have some serious conversations with the mayor, the county board, CPAD, and I think just the community too. The money's there. We got to build it, or we got to get a design. And I'm not trying to shame anyone. It's just that Nora has been, the cart is kind of in front of the horse on this. And not that our staff hasn't been working on it, but this project's really teed up for the next big thing. And he's kind of relentless. I wish I could say, oh, I did it all. No, that was Representative Knorr and Kerry Dietzick before that. They started this in the 2023 appropriation of, what was it, $3.5 million, and then Representative Knorr, I think what Pamela said too, moving that $5 million from deed over to the Met Council and over to a bonding side is going to give us we'll be dealing with one agency and one set of rules on how to do that. So that's just tremendous. And Commissioner Garcia, the neighborhood group, I think some of them were here today, that passion and energy, Commissioner Schaefer had worked on it, you carried through on it. I mean, it's very clear that the legislators there love our parks, and they're willing to go out on a limb and make it a priority. And again, with, these legislators that we've had and made friends over years and years or worked with them. Senator Pappas is leaving, but I think she's left a great legacy there. Representative Lilly's, stayed involved on it, and it's really a great opportunity. And just because I've spent a lot of time with Commissioner Benny on this and prior chairs. This sheet, to the newer members, really study it. I mean, and I'll talk about this in a minute. We've episodically been able to do bonding programs. As you see, sometimes there's zero. As Pamela said, there's no absolute must on that. This year, in terms of bonding, it was probably the second or maybe third best allocation. I guess it's the third. If you go back to 1986, we were able to dedicate, Carl Croning was able to dedicate all the interest earnings on the Met Council bonds for the North Mississippi Regional Park, and until some suburban legislators got extremely jealous about that and ended it, it's what really built that park. And I guess it, you know, it was a pretty good run while we had it for about 20 years. But, you know, this is a great outcome. We've always worked on the LCCMR. I'm glad to hear that that's expanded. Really, there should be a shout out to Representative Heintzman. He's a Republican from up in the Brainerd Lakes area. But he, like I, and I think like this board believes, we have a great system. We have a great state park system, and we always can't just keep building new stuff. You really have an obligation to take care of what's happened before. And I think that's what Representative Heintzman did with that trail maintenance program. And I hope we really, I don't use the word, hope we apply for it. I hope we maximize that, because that's really a key part. And on this O&M LCCMR appropriation, that can be another great source, given it's expanded. I mean, that account now is well over $1 billion. That account is kicking off. It's actually over $2 billion now. And all their spending is like 6.5% of the corpus on it a year. And that's going to just keep growing because they've liberalized the ways they can invest in it. And then, of course, legacy, which, you know, Mr. Arvidsson works with in the planning department. I mean, when I started this and you looked at these numbers, you couldn't build this system or sustain it. And the legacy program has now become a $5-6 million a year. Not only that, it's not this year, it's projected into the future. So you can really plan and expand on that. And that's why I'll wrap up quickly. I know it's getting late, but I talk about this on page 6, and that's this chart about things that this board, I think I'd really recommend you look forward to and work on. We've talked about this at a couple meetings. I've talked this a lot about with President Olson about for next year. I think we really do have to look at that airport. I almost could call up the map of Fort Snelling, and they showed some of the land out at Fort Snelling, but the airport sits on Fort Snelling, and the park board owns 600 acres at Fort Snelling. And the next time you go to the airport and you're at a terminal, you're on park board land. And we have gotten zero rent from that for 80 years or more. It was taken from us, or actually the control. Yeah, right. It's up there, and really you've talked about diversifying revenue. The taxpayers in Minneapolis, individuals, the homeowners, the apartment owners are going to look at a lot bigger tax hit. And I think that's really something I've talked to the president. We need to explore over the next few months. I've talked to Senator Dibble, Representative Gomez. We're planning future discussions on that. Literally, the airport is taking in hundreds of millions of dollars in rental fees for businesses that are operating at that terminal on land the park board has, and I think that's really got to be a serious issue. To do that, it will take this kind of cooperation with the city and with the other partners to see if that's a possibility to do it. One other issue that's come up, and it's already happening, and nobody's asked the park people about it. The legacy amendment expires in 2033. What I learned from working on that issue for 10 years, from 1998 to 2008 when it passed on behalf of this board, was the thinking is you bring these amendments that cost money up in presidential election years rather than state election years, because you're not going to want the governor, like this year, the governor's running the Senate, the House, they're not really going to want to talk about raising taxes in their election year. They'll talk about it in a presidential election year when only the House is up. And so there's only 2 elections presidential elections between now and 2033. One is in 2032, one is in 2028. I think the people behind the scenes are saying you don't want to wait until the very end to renew the legacy amendment, which includes Lessard-Sams, the clean water, the arts, and the culture and parks amendment. So there will be an issue, and the work is already underway with the people with money in this thing from the arts community and Lessard-Sams who want to renew this amendment. And that's going to land in their laps again in 8 months in January. So I think this board needs to think about it. I brought it up at our, Pamela knows that, in the Monday morning meetings. And the reality is on parks is that this board leads. The other ones are county entities. They have a lot to worry about. They have hospitals, healthcare, roads, other things. They'll help on parks, but they'll follow, but they won't lead. St. Paul has always been a good ally, and Three Rivers has been a good ally, but I think this board's gonna have to put out a marker here sometime soon saying if you want it renewed, and what are the terms? And again, I would say, frankly, we were cost tens of millions of dollars when we started out with this 2016. We were supposed to get 16 2/3% of those dollars. We got 14 1/4 because the money was taken and given to the arts and culture group and, you know, some other groups. And I think we need to look at that. And I also think there ought to be, my recommendation is there ought to be a focus on, we've spent 20 years now and 25 years in building out parks like they've done in acquiring land, and there ought to be, if you're gonna have a legacy amendment, maybe the focus needs to be something different than what we've done for the last 20 years. Not that we shouldn't invest in it, but maybe it is more maintenance. 3 other quick issues: LGA allocation. In 2023, we advocated with the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul, they should look at that formula. Well, what they've realized is state income tax revenues are now almost 50% of all the revenues the state gets, and yet the LGA for Minneapolis has stayed flat for decades. I mean, President Olson talked about a century on the airport. It's over a quarter century since Minneapolis really seen a significant increase in LGA. It's actually less than it was 25 years ago, and this board has had less, yet when you look at the income tax, I think that's another policy thing that really needs to be looked at. And especially when, you know, we're talking about raising a city income tax. Minnesota's already got a high income tax. It's just how that income tax is shared. And I mean, I think that's something, again, this board could look at. And I've already talked about Cedar Riverside. I think that's going to be a challenge to our, not a challenge, but I think this board's really got to say, what are we going to do with that project? The money's there. I mean, if you don't build it, are you going to give $10 million back to the state? And a key to that is the site's been identified, but the city's sitting on it. I'm not, again, criticizing them. They have their process. And the county has another part of the land, but getting that land wrapped up certainly should be a priority by the end of the year. And then Ms. Gokemeyer talked about the outdoor recreation enhancement account. That started off as a DNR initiative. They were going to use it to raise about $10 million for state park fees to replace it. But their estimate is that account in a short period of time, 3 or 4 years, could grow to over $32 million. And again, this board has talked a lot about O&M. That's what, again, I wish I could say, oh, I thought of it. No, Scott Dibble, St. Scott, who's our patron saint, read the proposal because it's in his committee, and he said, wait a minute, why would I just pass this on to the next committee and pass up the opportunity to do something for Metro Park? So it was really his initiative. He called me up one Monday morning at 7 o'clock, the phone rings, what's going on? He said, I got to talk to you. And so I said, no, you're on the absolute right path. And he wants Metro Parks to be a part of that. I think we've secured agreement from our Metro Park agencies that, yes, they want to be part of that, and we're teed up. But again, I think it's going to take some leadership on this board. And that, if we got 40% of that, potentially grows out to $32 million based on other states' experience, we're looking at possibly doubling and going from 9 or 10% on LGA payments just with this one idea to 20%. And that, you know, again, we get about 25% of that money, that'd be another $3 million. Now, that would take some time, but I think with the right sponsorship, and talk to Representative Jordan about that, Commissioner Engelhardt, and that there, you know, I think we need to put down a marker on that. So, you know, be happy to answer any other questions, but thank you for all the support that this board has given to the legislative team. And I'd say whatever happens in the future, you've really got to stay invested in this business over at the legislature.
We have one more slide.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Brian. So the next session, the 2027 session, starts on January 12th. It is a budget year, and it's following an election, a big election year, where all of the Minnesota's executive officers are up for re-election, as well as 1 U.S. Senate seat for Tina Smith replacement. Minnesota's 8 seats in the U.S. House of Reps are up. All the seats in the Minnesota Senate, State Senate, and the State House are up. And there are an exceptionally large number of retirements and candidates running for a different office. So I think there's like 43 seats that are going to turn over. So we're going to see a lot of new faces. But we expect our delegation to remain mostly the same. So we don't expect a big change within our delegation, but we'll certainly see a big change at the Capitol. And I really want to thank Brian and Frankie so much for the relentless work that they do. And I mean, Frankie is like eyes and ears at the Capitol 24/7. It doesn't matter what topic you ask her about. She either has the answer, she can find the answer. She's like sleuthing quiet, and the precision. I mean, the level of precision in her work is also remarkable. I mean, it's really commendable. So, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for the presentation. I just want to also it was said, but I just also read right here, this part. A huge thank you to the bonding chairs, Rep. Fu Lee, Senator Sandy Pappas, as well as Senators Champion, Clark, and Dibble, and Reps. Agbaji, Noor, and Jones. They brought it. They brought it. So I did not pay any attention to order, so I'm going to start with Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Chair Benny. Yeah, I just really want to extend my deep and heartfelt thanks on behalf of the Loring Park neighborhood and all of District 4 for all of the work. But Pamela, it was great getting to know you a little bit. I can't see you right now because we're on opposite sides of the monitor. But it was great being able to get to know you a little bit these first few months of my term. I would like to definitely say thank you to Frankie, not just for all of your dogged work at the Capitol, but also at Charter Commission. That's going above and beyond in a lot of ways. So I really want to appreciate that, or make sure you know that I appreciate that. And then one of my old coaches once told me, when the team loses, it's my fault as the leader, and when the team wins, it's a team effort. And reading through this memorandum from you, Councilor Rice, I see that ethic that you have been really hesitant to take credit for a lot of the hard work that you did, and it is great that you share that with your team and all of the people that you work with. But I really want to extend my deepest gratitude for the work that you did on finding the funding for North Commons, working with our legislative delegation on getting that pushed through, and then the $1.5 million for Cedar Riverside is going to be huge in that area, and then this $1.8 million sort of out of the blue surprise for all of us who care about the Burger Fountain and Loring Park. I just really want to express my deep gratitude for all of that work. Thank you.
President Olson.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Congrats. On to the next thing. As Councilor Rice said, we'll be having meetings with legislators in this interim to start to tee up some of our stuff for next year. Make sure we have the bills kind of all ready. The unfinished business around guns is, we gotta get that. We got it. There's stuff around ICE that I know we all care about, and we want. And liquor bill, super important. And to that, a lot of these legislators are going to be campaigning. I know, probably like me, we're all grateful that we don't have to be campaigning and knocking doors and all that. But, as Brian said, again, 9 lobbyists, let's start building those relationships. I'd really implore all of you to reach out to your reps and your senators in your area. Some of them are probably knocking doors here in Minneapolis, but most of them are probably going out to the suburbs because we have to flip the House. Certainly, there were absolutely Republican allies that helped us get some wins this year. That said, there are a lot of things that we really care about that aren't going to pass unless there's a DFL trifecta. So building those relationships, knocking those doors is going to be huge. And, as we go into the next session, as we come up with our agenda, we'll have our legislative breakfast. But again, I would really encourage us to all do meetings again, sit down, get comfortable at the Capitol, be out there, because I feel a really strong sense of momentum behind this board, behind the political capital that we have at the state. Now is the time to build on that, not get complacent. Because our parks are awesome, we're awesome, and we can make all of our friends and allies at the Capitol realize that, and because they love these projects. I mean, I was in the elevator with Rep. Jordan, and she said, "We did get my skate park or whatever." I'm like, "We'll get on it." So they are excited about these things as much as we are. But good job, everyone. Let's get some more wins.
Commissioner Engelhardt.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think there is, we didn't expect much, so what we got was awesome, given the expectations. But one vote in the House is what held up all the things and more that President Olson just referenced. We didn't get what we needed on federal overreach and tyranny and, gun safety, and we didn't get everything funded. And that's literally one state representative seat, about 30,000, that represents about 30,000 people. And some of these elections are 10, 20, 30 votes. So, anybody paying attention out there and are, watching online, join me and others on knocking those doors. And, other than being a commissioner, I work for MAPE, and our political program, I think we do pretty good on where to be and where to spend time in terms of the balance of power in the legislature. Particularly interested in, I agree that I think we can't wait until 2032 to renew the legacy amendment. In 2008, that was staffed up like a campaign. It was vote yes for the environment and the arts. So whoever's putting that campaign together, let's hire up and get some staff, and let's make sure we don't have to just hold our breath with 1 year left. And then this 10 million, effectively we need this, we're talking about tearing down and rebuilding the Brian Coyle Center, correct? That's what that's for. So we just need the city and the county to give us the land. Is that simple?
Well, I'll defer to the staff, but the idea is there's a Lot A there that was, Commissioner Engelhardt, that has been identified. It's a new land. We do have some complications with PUC. I think Commissioner Despande has gotten rolled up his sleeves on that one. But yeah, it's something that's been, I believe, supported by the council member, and the county's aware of it. It's just like, it's time to pull the trigger, I guess, is what I would say on that project. Commissioner Benny's familiar with it too from her when she was president of the board, and staff is, so.
Thank you.
Vice President Despande.
Thank you, Chair Benny. I just wanted to say I'm really grateful and really thankful to all of you, Frankie, Brian, Pamela. You did a lot of work, and it was amazing watching you in action too. So when I came to Capitol, and I could feel it, I could see it. You know what you're doing, that's clear, but you make it fun too, and I think that's part of the reason why we're able to tip these things over the edge and get what we need. We have a force and we have a presence that's different than what other agencies do. So thank you to you, and thank you too to Chair Benny for being at the Capitol and for speaking up and for making those connections also. One other thing I want to say is, particularly with Council Rice, is that you have a lot of advice too, because based on the spreadsheet, you've been around a while, so that advice goes a long way too in helping us with our strategy. So I would love to just keep hearing more of that from you, because that's also what gives us an edge that nobody else has. So thank you again for your work. This was really exciting.
Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. I don't know what his involvement was, being that his job is over there, but I don't think anybody's commented. Thank you, President Olson, for your whatever engagement you might have been in there, but I believe that there was more than maybe a lot of us know about and everything. I do have to make a shout out. I'm just kind of amazed that nobody said it. Okay, yeah, we were third again as far as the Trust for Public Land is concerned and everything. But I think that Brian put it very well. We've got a great product. And I don't care what the trust feels. We know what the overlying or underlying whatever issue is there, and that is about the fact of equity. And even though Trump is taking over the majority of the park land in Washington, D.C., that's another issue. But I think it's interesting that so far, I think just about everybody has commented about Consul Rice. Right now, he's lobbyist Rice. And I think that is what is so amazing is this relationship that we've had, as he indicated on the back page and everything. How many years? 40 plus? A few years. And I'm just so grateful for your service in both roles and how significant that is, that we have a consul and a lobbyist with the profound history that he carries. Thank you so much, Brian, for all that you do. Hoorah.
Commissioner Frederick.
Thank you, Chair Benny. I would like to dogpile onto the compliments if you'll let me, because I think they're well deserved, and I have so much admiration for the work of Council Rice and Frankie, your work at the Capitol, Pamela, your ability to somehow consolidate the information in a way I can understand it, which is incredible, because there's a lot of moving parts, and I really commend the ability to present something so that we're able to, take these actions and share with the public and our constituencies just how much work and effort is being put into a system that serves so many people in and around Minneapolis. So it has not gone unsaid today, but I hope it continues to be spoken. Thank you to Commissioner Benny for that work as well at the Capitol, Chair Benny. As we continue to think about independence of the park board and our ability to move and manufacture positive spaces, I think this work just underscores how important and valuable the rest of the state sees the independence and the work of the park board. So I just, kudos for our ability to connect and align on that. And kudos to those who uplift it where it's arguably most important. So thank you very much.
I'll make just a couple more comments. It's still a little bit of the love session here, but it's worth saying, I think. I think the board should get some credit for being unified on North Commons. And President Olson, you called that out at the breakfast. You said, yeah, this other stuff's great, but North Commons. And the reason that's important is I think, the third oldest board member up here, so I was around in the olden days more when, we'd say that was the top priority, but then other commissioners would go whisper to their legislator, hey, you know what, I don't really care about that, I want this. And I don't think that happened at all. In fact, I think everybody here reached out to their representatives at the legislature. And we stayed focused on that to make sure that this organization would deliver that amazing promise. Go Foundation, got a little more money to get. So anyway, that's a big deal. I think that's a big deal. The other thing I would just say on the Love Fest piece is that, I've heard the word a number of times here, relationships. Also the ability to deliver, right? Some competence and overall reputation. If you look at this list that was put together in the memo by our lobbyists, our legal counsel, it shows there's momentum here for the amount of funding that has grown over time. And that's really because the park board is, I think, seen as a good investment. So let's take to heart that piece of the Cedar Riverside that we do need to finish acquisition of land or understand how the partnerships are going to shake out so that that money can start to get spent. And then the last thing, I'm just going to put a plug in, since there's so much O&M money for regional parks now available to us, I'm hoping that we can put together a really good list of trail maintenance for the trail funding, separate funding, and that we can spend our regional park dollars on other things, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I hope we go for some of that trail maintenance money. So anyway, okay?
Could I just say one
Yes.
last point, because we don't spend a lot of time, no, I mean it, sometimes in an organization, you'll spend a lot of time on the things that are broken or need to be fixed, or that are areas, and sometimes when things are really going well, you don't talk about it, and it did go well this year, and sometimes it can't, but I would just say that's the power of what this board does, and I think maybe the lesson I'd say from North Commons, I've heard it, Commissioner Forney, the board made a commitment and you stuck to the commitment. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. We made a commitment to Cedar Riverside going back years. And people want to get on the list, but I think if we get a project on the list and you ask Mr. Schroeder or, you know, the other staff members, Mr. Arvidsson, if you put it on the list and the board's got the internal will to do it and you stick to it, it'll happen. And it has happened, or very close to happening with North Commons. It can happen with Cedar. It can happen with, I know Sid Jordan wants her skate park, and so does Commissioner Engelhardt. And there's other, Commissioner Rucker worked really hard on North Commons, coach there, all these other things. We can do it, but it does take that, okay, we're committed to it, and let's stick to it. And that's why I'm very gratified. Thank you for your kind words, Commissioner Garcia, but I've learned in a long time, no, it isn't just about me. I mean, it's about everyone in the room, everybody in the organization that's committed to it, and that what's gratifying is all the commissioners past and present, the superintendents who've really committed to it and stuck by it. That's the success here. I mean, in probably the darkest days of this board, when R.T. Ryback got elected commissioner, or Superintendent Marilyn Anderson had cut a deal with Mayor Belton on basically a precursor of NPP 20. It got torn up in part because there was a LGA crisis and Governor Plenty took the money away. But even still, they stuck with the park dedication fee was an idea that came up there. Continuing to support the legacy amendment when everybody else was giving up on it. This board said, no, we want it. When there were other strategies, the thing, Don Siegel-Cole was here and we did the whole tin fish and sea salt and diversification. I think we're now kind of at an inflection point from the meeting you had last week that we got to start looking at new ideas on revenue. And, Commissioner Olson was at the BET today. It's time for another rebirth of these ideas. If it's Senator Dibble's idea or some other things, we're going to need to keep the system. We've always been number one. When I first got elected board, Skip Gilbert was there. He said not only was it the best park system in the country, it was the best park system in the entire universe. And I still believe that.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I'll declare this meeting adjourned.